I guess with everyone going silent, that means we're supposed to start. Are we gonna go? We're gonna start. We're gonna start right at 6 o'clock. There's representatives.
Yes.
We're ready to start? Okay, thank you. I will let everyone know if you are uncomfortable because you're standing, there is overflow and we are projecting. You cannot hear me. I'll bring it closer. Is that better?
Press the button on your microphone.
I can. Okay. How's that? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Vince Porter. I'm Governor Kotek's Deputy Chief of Staff for Public Administration. Thank you for being here tonight. Like I said, if you didn't hear me before, if you can't find a seat, there is overflow seating across the way where we are projecting the video and the audio. So tonight, the Office of Governor Kotek is hosting this public meeting to discuss a proposed action that's being considered by the governor based on the temporary executive authority granted to her under Senate Bill 4 from 2023 legislative session. Our primary goal tonight is to accept public comment on that proposed action following a presentation from our office and our partners. I was going to say something about public comment that you can fill out yellow cards. We have now received 44, 45. It's unlikely we're going to be able to get through 45 public testimony by 9 o'clock tonight, but we are going in the order of the presentation, and we will also give everyone an opportunity to submit comment. Public comment will be received until October 30th at 5 o'clock, and we will provide that information if you are unable to provide testimony tonight before 9 o'clock. We will spend roughly the next hour discussing the proposed action, and we'll leave the remainder of the meeting available for public comment. And as a reminder, like I said, we're receiving both in-person and remote public comment this evening and also online. So for the past 30 years, Oregon has been one of the most critical semiconductor research and development and manufacturing hubs in the country, if not the world. Washington County and Hillsboro in particular has been the center of gravity of our Silicon Forest, which has driven Oregon's economic growth and stability for those past decades. In 2022, we were given a new call to action by the U.S. Congress, led by our senior Senator Ron Wyden and the rest of our federal delegation, who partnered with President Joe Biden to pass the CHIPS and Science Act into law. This $52 billion package of investments are once in a generation, and states across the country have responded to the call to action by the federal government. Oregon as well responded quickly. The 28-member Semiconductor Task Force was formed in 2022 so that we could better understand the landscape as it relates to the semiconductor industry in Oregon. The report back then and the recommendations produced by the task force informed how Oregon responded to the call to action. And in 2023, the Oregon legislature passed the Oregon CHIPS Act through Senate Bill 4, which Governor Kotek signed into law, putting in motion several of the recommendations that came from that original task force. And that law created the Oregon CHIPS Fund. When Governor Kotek signed Senate Bill 4 into law, she was very clear that the Oregon CHIPS Act needed to be a tool that would not only maintain our position in the industry today, but also be a tool to ensure that Oregon would continue to be a research and development and manufacturing hub for decades to come. And the early results have been positive. Well, as Oregon has maintained its leadership as a hub of semiconductor innovation, research and development, and manufacturing. In fact, in May of 2023, we opened round 1 of the Oregon CHIPS Fund and received 15 initial applications. Of those 15 applications with projects, we have executed 9 contracts amounting to approximately $38 billion of capital investment commitment for our state. The largest of those commitments came from Intel, which announced its $36 billion Oregon modernization and expansion project in March of this year. This announcement was partnered with a multi-billion-dollar commitment from the federal CHIPS program. Now, every time Intel has made a massive investment in Oregon, it has resulted in a ripple effect within the industry in Washington County and ultimately impacting our entire state. We have seen in the past just how rapid the development occurring from companies connected to the supply chain of semiconductors can be. And this most recent investment has mirrored what we've seen in the past, as several companies have deepened their roots in the Silicon Forest, and there's evidence that more are on the way. To date, Oregon has been successful in receiving 3 federal awards from the CHIPS Act, which is second only to one other state that has received 4 awards. And we hope to see more companies located in Oregon receive awards from the CHIPS office before the completion of the program. With a few round 1 Oregon CHIPS Fund projects not reaching the contract phase by the predetermined deadline, we have secured a new round of 6 projects that have received letters of intent from the Oregon CHIPS program. Those new projects were announced on October 3rd this year, last week, with 4 of the 6 targeting new and expanding operations in the Hillsboro area. All this work has solidified our place in the industry, but we're not done. There is still more pieces of the CHIPS Act that are critical to the future of the U.S. semiconductor industry. One in particular is the creation of the National Semiconductor Technology Center, which will have at least 3 large locations around the country. Oregon's long-standing history in semiconductors and having a talented workforce should make our state an ideal location for at least one of those 3 sites. But we know the competition is fierce, and there are several other states who are aggressively pursuing those projects and those designations. We know other proposals are offering attractive packages, including ample land to develop an NSTC site that can expand over time. Should Oregon become one of those sites, the ripple effect in the industry will again come quickly, and we must ensure Oregon's competitiveness in attracting those opportunities. So over the past several months, Governor Kotek has been assessing the opportunity, learning about our competition, and asking tough questions of the coalition working to land this critically important project. And along with our federal partners who are connected to the NSTC process, Governor Kotek has been a strong champion for our state. And from this analysis, she's determined that the opportunity in front of us, along with the long-term economic impact of winning a site, warrants the consideration of exercising her authority to bring in 373 acres in the North Hillsboro area before the end of this calendar year. The governor is very aware that there are some who feel the amount of acreage should have been more. And it's possible that over time, successful development of a world-class research and development facility will bring additional demand for development. Because this was made clear back in 2022 from the recommendations of the Semiconductor Task Force. But it's important to note that this 373-acre plot of land will be a significant step to allow development in the near term and will not only benefit Oregon, but hopefully the entire nation. Governor Kotek also greatly respects Oregon's land use planning system and does not take this authority lightly, given that she was given in Senate Bill 4, and she has no interest in using her authority to trigger an unintended consequence. For that reason, should she bring in this acreage into the metro urban growth boundary, there will need to be guarantees around the development and the use of the land. The purpose must be focused on semiconductor and advanced manufacturing sector, which means the focus of any development will need to be on research and development and manufacturing projects in those sectors. Now, it's understood that data centers are very popular development opportunities due to the rise of artificial intelligence. But this proposal cannot include a project where a data center is a primary use. And I want to thank the City of Hillsboro and Washington County who have been engaged and have expressed a willingness to partner with the state on the intent behind this requirement. We look forward to continue working with them to get the appropriate requirements spelled out in any zoning requirements in the future. And now I'd like to introduce and pass the comments over to our Semiconductor Manager, Sarah Means, who will provide more details about the governor's draft determination and the proposed acreage.
Thanks, Vince. Good evening, everyone. Sarah Means, the Semiconductor Manager for Governor Tina Kotek. As Vince mentioned, Senate Bill 4 granted the governor limited authority as it relates to land use in the semiconductor industry. Effectively, if the governor determines there is a need directly tied to projects in the semiconductor industry that are also tied to the state and or federal CHIPS program, she has the authority to annex land into an existing urban growth boundary for the purposes of this development. This process is clearly outside of the typical urban growth boundary expansion process through an expedited process authorized in Senate Bill 4. Furthermore, the governor must exercise this authority before December 31, 2024. A draft determination has been made available online at the Oregon Business Development Department website. Senate Bill 4 had very specific criteria that must be applied to any land considered and designated by the governor for annexation. This included that the land must be contiguous to a city's existing urban growth boundary. Land must be entirely within 3 miles of the city's existing urban growth boundary. And none of the land under consideration can be within an area designated as acknowledged urban reserves or rural reserves. And there were specific ORS cited as a part of that in the bill, and I would encourage you, if you're interested, to look that up. Additionally, under Senate Bill 4, the governor is required to conduct one public meeting in the city nearest the site in coordination with the city and county. Our meeting tonight serves as that public meeting. Senate Bill 4 also requires the governor to accept public comment for a minimum of 20 days following the public meeting. The governor formally opened public comment on October 3rd and is accepting public comment tonight and will continue to do so through October 30th. Again, the governor's authority expires on December 31, 2024, so we need to make sure we're providing ourselves ample time to move forward with any decision-making process. Should the governor decide to move forward with this proposal, that final determination and an executive order accompanying that must be issued prior to December 31st. A map of the proposed 373 acres has been made available also on the Oregon Business Development Department website. The proposed 373 acres, there were maps available in paper copy. There were as many as enough for everybody to have one, but if you were able to get one, they were available, but they are also on the Business Oregon website, so please do take a look there. The proposed 373 acres satisfies the approval criteria established by Senate Bill 4 and is an important aspect of active projects directly related to the semiconductor industry, both research and development and manufacturing here in Oregon. The opportunity to compete and successfully land a national semiconductor technology center can't be overstated in the impact that will have for Oregon, the US, and globally on semiconductor research and development. Successfully landing an NSTC is a critical component for Oregon to realize the goal of keeping and sustaining our leadership in the semiconductor research and development industry. The governor believes, based on her analysis, that a measured step of annexing 373 acres warrants consideration, and her taking the next step in the process outlined in Senate Bill 4 to conduct this public meeting and accept public comment on the potential action. We've mentioned zoning and potential permitted uses of the land already here tonight. Another topic that might be of interest to the public is the needed infrastructure planning for the land. Partners at both the city and county have been working on those specific items, and we invite them here tonight to discuss that now.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Roberts. I'm the Director of Land Use and Transportation for Washington County. Thank you for being here tonight. I have just a couple of slides that will just take me a minute or two probably to run through, and then I'll pass it on to my cohort at the city. Great, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to just point out a little bit of history on this particular property that we're going to be discussing tonight. So it was property that has a long history. It's been looked at for potential urban uses as far back as the late 2000s. And so there was a long, lengthy public process that took place really between about 2008 and 2011 that resulted in Metro and Washington County designating the land where the star is the 373 acres that's under consideration. That land and the adjacent lands that are also in the very dark green color on the slide, if you can see that, were all designated as urban reserve by Metro and Washington County in 2010, and then again with some amendments in 2011. House Bill 4078 was passed by the legislature in 2014. In that bill, there were a number of changes to the urban and rural reserve designations in Washington County, as well as the urban growth boundary. As a part of House Bill 4078, the lands that are currently in that dark green color were actually changed from urban reserve to rural reserve, and that's the status that they currently hold today. And then quickly, I'll just say that as a partner in this effort, we are here and ready to collaborate with the governor's office and our partners at the City of Hillsboro, Business Oregon, and we'll have other partner agencies that will be participating in the infrastructure planning and the land use planning for this area, assuming that the governor does bring it into the urban growth boundary. As noted, Senate Bill 4 does provide for the passage of an ordinance by the county governing body, the Board of County Commissioners, within 6 months. They will need to designate the land as industrial within that 6-month time frame. And as Sarah and Vince just noted, that there will be some restrictions on the specific types of industrial uses that would be allowed in there, so that we'll need to accommodate those in any county and potential city ordinances. So the county's ordinance would amend the county comp plan elements, and that would essentially apply that industrial land use designation that's stipulated within the Senate bill, and then reflect the urban growth boundary expansion as it's adopted potentially by the governor, and then some other changes that would help facilitate some needed transportation and other infrastructure investments. And as a part of that process, the county will follow our standard procedure for adopting land use ordinances, and that does require advanced public notice and then public comment opportunity, public testimony opportunity. And that's really all I had to say. And with that, I'll pass it to my colleague Dan Diaz with the City of Hillsboro.
All right, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right, great, thanks. Thanks to everybody for coming out this evening. I'll run through a couple of additional slides here. Some of this will overlap information that's been shared by our partners, both with the governor's office and with the county, but we hope it really helps to clarify this effort and what's been done to date and also what lies ahead. So I'm going to start with a pretty text-heavy slide. but this is really important to, from a verbatim standpoint, reflect that this work is the continuation and has been informed by community input, really spanning the period of decades. At the top of this slide, and the highlight is put in there for emphasis, comes from the Hillsboro Community's 2020 vision, and really efforts that or priorities articulated by the community around economic vitality and sustainability. And most notably and related to this work is for the city to continue to pursue and maintain an economic development strategy, ensuring an adequate supply of size and range in utility served industrial parcels for a variety of target industries, one of which has been and continues to be the semiconductor industry. Additionally, the community's vision outlined the goal to continue to attract, and as our economic base has built out over the years, retain and continue to support the expansion of that industry, with a focus too of creating family wage jobs and making Hillsboro a jurisdiction that is a prime choice for family wage employers and those jobs that come with them. This is a key piece which contributes to very regular recognition of the city of Hillsboro from a nationwide standpoint as one of the most livable and desired places to live when compared with other cities across the US. The 2020 vision was updated and it has become the 2035 community plan, but many of the community's same sentiments and desires have been reflected and continued into that most current vision document, as highlighted in the next two bullets, really focusing on and encouraging city staff and leadership to implement activities including industry cluster development, again, supporting the retention and expansion and recruitment of companies, especially with that emphasis to technology and manufacturing, and also to continue to develop and enhance Hillsboro's globally competitive infrastructure, which includes sites, industrial scale infrastructure like water, sewer, power, and the like, in attracting traded sector employers. This opportunity is a direct reflection and in direct alignment with that community's stated goal and priority. And then lastly, this work is a reflection of many years running city council guiding principles and goals that our leadership has conveyed to staff, and it has influenced a lot of this work. The first one is to continue to try to position Hillsboro to be a leader in supporting business, and especially with strategic investments that grows prosperity in our community, the region, and the state. That's in part why you see the partnership and the joint presentation that's happening before you this evening. Also explicitly called out in the current principles and priorities is to implement the North Hillsboro Technology Park. That's the area really between Evergreen Parkway and Highway 26 and west of Brookwood Parkway. And then lastly is to reestablish the additional lands in North Hillsboro for future major campuses and semiconductor supply chain opportunities. That is a priority that directly aligns with and reflects also some of what Vince and others have mentioned as it relates to the Oregon CHIPS Act, also known as Senate Bill 4. Those priorities become important because this work, especially over the last couple of decades, also enables and allows our community to achieve other priorities, including things such as delivering the fire stations and purchasing of some key apparatus and equipment. Also, beloved community assets such as the Gordon Faber Sports Complex, which is now and continues to be the home of the Hillsboro Hops and hosting programs like Portland State Softball and many of our youth high school sporting activities. The adjacent Hondo Dog Park was also delivered as a result and in coordination with a lot of this development activity historically in the community. Beyond that, and a little bit more recently, the well-recognized Hidden Creek Community Park, as well as Oro, the all-inclusive access and playground, was delivered in large part with funding that has been generated by this type of industrial investment and activity from these target industries. Other uniquely distinguished features of the city like Highlight and the very accessible public broadband that provides from an equitable standpoint was also enabled and made possible with funds and revenues that directly come from the type of industrial activity that was called out in the goals and community priorities on the last slide. Beyond that, we also have been enabled as a community to invest back in our people, in our community, because of this economic development activity. Things like Portland Community College's Future Connect that seeks to support students that are either first in their families to attend college or also maybe from low-income households, or both. Our city has been able to invest $1.3 million supporting over 600 students with scholarships in that type of a program. And so those are some of the many direct community benefits that are also achieved and enabled by this type of planning and opportunity work being realized here in our city. So in order to measure those, we want to hit a quick statistical piece. I'm going to highlight the ones that are in blue on the screen. And those become important because Hillsboro has had and continues to have a heavy focus on manufacturing. This was true in that 1 in 3 jobs in Hillsboro, of those 87,000, are connected directly to manufacturing. There's many non-manufacturing jobs, construction work, for example, or service sector related work like restaurants or hair salons or banker positions that also support these jobs in these industries. But more specifically to the topic at hand, is that 89% of Hillsboro's manufacturing jobs are in the high-tech manufacturing industry. The state of Oregon, as some of you may know or have read recently in press, is the second largest concentration of semiconductor workforce in the entire country, making up about 15% currently of the US workforce. Hillsboro is home to 78% of the state's semiconductor manufacturing workforce. And so we truly are a concentration and one of the greatest areas of activity that are driving much of those policies and setting up to align with some of those federal goals as well that Vince mentioned. So what does that look like within our community? Our community continues to be very focused on smart growth and complete community planning and delivery. We seek to blend a variety of housing choices, seeking continuously to address housing affordability and housing choice. But in order to do that, we also have to blend and pair that with a very solid and sustaining economic base. And so this is the northern part of Hillsboro. Highway 26 is highlighted in yellow, really running from the lower right to the upper left of the screen. And this map lays out many, but not all, of the key businesses and industries located in a very concentrated footprint in North Hillsboro. You can see probably some familiar names. Intel gets discussed a lot. The big label in the middle is their Gordmore Park at Ronler Acres campus, a very unique facility from a global semiconductor standpoint. You can see a lot of their supply chain around them. I saw some information recently talking about the importance of Tokyo Electron, for example. They're a tool manufacturer, or you see companies like Gyra Semiconductor, they too make chips, or Corvo in the lower left, they too are making chips. So a lot of this activity. You also see some complementary industry on here as well. Entities like Genentech, that is a biotech firm, but relies on a lot of the same attributes and needs as the semiconductor industry. You see food processing and the like. But the important thing to note here is that this is concentrated in a very tight geographic area, and it also is a very unique concentration, really, when you look globally and across the country. This is one of the most complete and extensive concentrations of semiconductor industry anywhere in the United States. And what happens here between production and research is also very unique and aligns very closely with the goals and purposes of the Oregon CHIPS Act, as well as that of the Federal CHIPS Act. Lastly, I'd like to note that the existing semiconductor industry footprint that has been built in North Hillsboro really over the last 25 to 30 years is about 1,200 net acres. And a net acre is really the usable portion of land. It doesn't account for things like floodplain or wetlands or roadways or power corridors or things like that that cannot be used. And so when we look ahead at this immediate opportunity and this once in a generation opportunity, as Vince noted, building off of the lessons we have learned, the way in which we've been able to concentrate this industry in this area, that is what's giving insight into our future planning and opportunities. And then lastly, this area is also home to some of the best, most redundant infrastructure, especially at an industrial scale, and needed to serve the opportunities and the different types of uses that have been discussed and that may emerge as part of these opportunities. So both of my peer jurisdictions up here have shared aspects of timelines, so I'm going to not try to completely duplicate that, but we did want to expand out a little bit because we have heard especially some of the questions and concerns around public comment and public engagement, and some assertions that we believe are maybe not fully accurate, that this is just a immediate knee-jerk reaction, and that's simply not true for this geographic area, and those facts are important and matter here. In 2008 to 2011, the Oregon land use system changed and required that cities, in coordination with counties and in coordination with the metro urban growth boundary, plan for urban reserve areas, which are those areas that over time would be looked to and would serve the urbanization and growth needs of communities and of regions. That process started in 2008 and ran for 3 full years, culminating with Washington County, the Portland Metropolitan Regional Government, and the state of Oregon approving urban reserves. And that was the map that Stephen showed a moment ago that included a dark green area of which this governor's proposed 373 acres was within. That decision, much like almost any land use decision in Oregon, was litigated and taken through the courts in that second column on the upper part from 2011 through 2014. That did not allow the urban reserves to proceed and become effective. It also did not allow some of the required urban growth boundaries for both housing and employment land to proceed during that period of time. On the lower part of this display, you can see that there was industry activity of a major scale happening tied to this industry here in Hillsboro as well. In 2010, Intel got approval for their major new D1X facility, the most leading edge type of manufacturing facility in the country at that period of time. And that induced more of that supply chain growth that Vince noted earlier in the presentation. At the end of 2014, the litigation for the urban reserves was starting to culminate, and there was action taken by the legislature in what's referred to as House Bill 4078. And here we see a legislative intervention in the land use process. And as part of that, some refer to it as the grand bargain. Frankly, it was a grand trade-off. What that provided was housing certainty in areas like South Hillsboro and other parts of Washington County where we were able to plan for some of the state's largest master plan communities and delivered much needed housing. Unfortunately, one of the unintended consequences of that legislation is it mortgaged Hillsboro in the state's economic positioning and future moving forward, in taking out the very lands that we are talking about here this evening, including some additional areas to the west that had gone through public processes, extensive amounts of public engagement, numerous public hearings, and through the normal land use process. During that same time, Intel came in and then added a second major fab facility in its D1X Mod 2. That was in 2012. It usually takes about 18 to 24 months for those to be fully built. These are when those projects were approved. From 2014 to 2020 on the upper part, we didn't see a lot of land use activity happening. We, as a city, were building out and planning for South Hillsboro. And in the industrial side, we really were working with the remaining lands that were in the urban growth boundary at that point in North Hillsboro, much of which have captured key projects tied to the semiconductor industry like Hitachi High-Tech's Global Nanotechnology Center and a variety of others. I also think it's important to highlight that in 2020, all of us saw major changes in our lives, in our world, in our community. There was the COVID pandemic hit, but more importantly, and I'd remind you, we started to see a shift economically with global supply chains and availability or accessibility of goods. Think about the shortages of chips and how that affected people's ability to get cell phones or computers or cars or washing machines. Our community sits at the heart of that because of the concentration of this industry here. During that same time at the federal government, there was starting to be a lot of additional activity. We've heard about the CHIPS Act coming. There was other efforts that started to be talked about. And so in February 2022, at state leadership's direction, the Oregon Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force was created to really evaluate where and how does the state play to its strengths and really seek to maximize these opportunities for Oregonians and for future generations to come. That was to do an assessment and to advise both local communities, state level partners, and the like of how to best engage industry, how to best make wise and informed decisions in this space. So that was formed in February 2022. In August of 2022, the US CHIPS and Science Act was passed by Congress and signed by President Biden. At the very same time, in the same month, the Oregon Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force completed its roughly 6-month assessments and issued its report recommending to state leadership what steps needed to be taken to ensure Oregon's competitiveness and success in capturing of these opportunities. That informed efforts in the Oregon legislature in 2023 that ultimately passed Senate Bill 4 and the Oregon CHIPS Act that Vince and others have talked about this evening. As part of that package, the absolute shortage of viable sites to this industry, not a shortage of industrial land across the state, sites that are attractive and usable by this industry were called out in that SB4 report and reflected in the SB4 bill, giving the governor the authority that we're here tonight. Shortly after the passage of the Oregon SB4, the Biden administration announced in March of 2024 the $8.5 billion CHIPS award to Intel. Paired with that, the Oregon Chips Awards were going out to Intel and many other suppliers, and including other key companies in the area like Analog Devices, some of the suppliers that you saw on the map here in Hillsboro. And ultimately, then that authority coming out of that second legislative action around land use of SB4 brings us to the public meeting that we have this evening. So here's a regional vicinity map that shows the area that's being considered this evening. Sorry for the size and the scale of it. Some of you may see in the upper left here is what we were talking about, the 373 acres. The metro urban growth boundary, which is outlined in the yellow or gold, depending on which color it's showing up on your screen, is about 260,974 acres in size. The 373 gross acres, which is really about 317 rough usable acres to the point I made a minute ago, is highlighted and circled in green here and makes up about 0.13% of the current Metro UGB. That spans from Gresham to Forest Grove, from the Columbia River to Wilsonville. So as we zoom into the vicinity map, here is that 373 from a more local feeling standpoint and what that looks like. It's important to note that it's immediately adjacent to the concentration of that North Hillsboro industry. So Jackson School Road runs along the west side of the blue, or the left side of the blue. Brookwood intersection you can see on the right side. And again, Highway 26 is running from the lower right to the upper left. So all of this, as Sarah noted, is within a mile or two of that existing concentration of industry where they like to co-locate together and immediately adjacent to much of that industrial scaled infrastructure. We have started preliminary planning work, but these next couple slides, I want to really emphasize that we have a lot of planning work ahead. But as we were working with the governor's office and as we started to be made aware of her designation and interest in using the authority for this 373 acres, we were working with partners, and I want to thank those partners in Washington County, Oregon Department of Transportation, Clean Water Services, Portland General Electric, Northwest Natural. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, our city utilities like water and sewer as well, to try to put the best plans together so we can continue to maintain those principles of smart growth, be compact and efficient as we seek to expand here, but also be in a position to expand and grow our city and our state's economy. So this is the first of those planning maps. It shows the Crescent Park Greenway, which is a city policy focused around environmental benefit as well as recreational opportunity. And it shows a 150-foot buffer on either side of the creek, which becomes massively important because as this area will come in and urbanize, we will actually be restoring that riparian corridor from an incised irrigation ditch due to the farming activity around it to that Crescent Park Greenway corridor that'll be about 300 feet wide, restoring environmental functions, restoring habitat, and also creating recreational trail linkages to other parts of our community. The next slide is the preliminary sanitary sewer map. So the sewer line that's in dark red is a planned sewer line that we are currently working on with development that's happening in the darker shades of gray. The dotted line is existing infrastructure that the city and its utility partners have recently invested in to serve this broader area, again, trying to be very compact and efficient in this growth. And that line with the extension of potentially that yellow line is a service connection, really will be able to serve the bulk of the sanitary needs for this area. So again, more refinement will be needed here, but that's the general approach of serviceability in a quite efficient and well-planned way. Similarly, the preliminary transportation plan has been evaluated, and we are working with those transportation partners to use as much of the existing transportation infrastructure as possible. This will require additional evaluation, and there will likely need to be upgrades at certain key intersections. Meek Road and Jackson School Road, for example, the new Huffman connection into Jackson School Road, evaluation of the interchange at Highway 26. But each of those squares signifies an area that we have identified will need to do some additional evaluation and look at mitigating packages for increased transportation in this area. This plan will be a multimodal transportation plan that will take into account vehicular movements, freight movements, as well as bike and ped connections as well, to really link this part of our community up to the many other centers, including our downtown, Aranco Station, the existing industrial area, and the like. The preliminary water plan, water is massively important to this industry, and our community, as well as its partners, have been long planning for a redundant and stable water supply. will be served by the extension of existing lines in Meek Road and Jackson School Road, really shown in the dotted red and the dotted blue lines. The pink asterisk is on here. Planning asterisk always means there's something needed there, but it's not exactly known where or how yet. But there is anticipated we will need an additional reservoir site up in this area, especially depending on the level of water usage of this area. So that's what the pink asterisk denotes, is somewhere up in this vicinity we will need to do a future study and likely delivery of a water reservoir. And then lastly, there's already been a fair amount of conversation on zoning, but I'll touch on it as well. We would anticipate creating and adopting a local industrial zone that reflects the requirements and intentions of Senate Bill 4. We would fully anticipate limitations on uses similar to what Vince and Stephen have noted previously, and really an emphasis or focus on the uses and development patterns up here to really support the semiconductor industry. And I want to note everything that's here, again, is preliminary, will need to be refined if and when the governor issues her executive order. And that would be done in coordination with those other utility partners, really in that 6 months following that Stephen talked about. I also want to note that the cost of this infrastructure will also be determined, and it's anticipated that the bulk of this infrastructure extension would be borne by either incentivization from the state or in partnership with that private development bearing those costs. So with that, we'll just summarize where next steps go in the timeline. You can see we're here on the October 10th public meeting, as noted previously by the other presenters. The 30-day public comment period closes the 30th. At that point, our staff and our community will await to see the governor's executive order in which direction she elects to go. And if a decision is made and land is brought in, we would then commence that 6-month planning process to complete the local plans and implementation programs to be able to realize this opportunity. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to present that additional information.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, so we do have a few elected officials. The way the rest of the night's going to go is we're going to ask the elected officials who've signed up representing the community to come up and speak. We're going to ask them to keep their comments to 3 minutes like everyone else that we're going to ask, so that we can get through as many people testifying as possible. So I'd like to first start with Mayor Callaway of Hillsboro, Chair Harrington of Washington County, and Metro Council President Lynn Peterson. And I apologize that we're going to keep you to those 3 minutes.
Well, good evening, Mr. Porter and Ms. Means. Thank you for coming to Hillsboro to hold this public meeting. My name is Steve Calloway, and I'm the mayor of the City of Hillsboro. On behalf of the City of Hillsboro and our community, I want to thank Governor Kotek for taking this important first step toward expanding the semiconductor industry in our state. We know the semiconductor industry is poised for 1990s-like growth. Over the next 20 years, a single semiconductor campus expansion could generate $2.8 billion in net revenues for the state. And expanding the semiconductor industry is Oregon's best chance for equitable economic opportunity and advancing prosperity for all. We also know that without land availability and site readiness, Oregon will not fully seize this generational opportunity. The Silicon Forest right here in Washington County is the largest and most mature semiconductor center in the United States. Our existing semiconductor cluster is one of 3 places in the world and the only one in the United States producing leading-edge research and development for semiconductor manufacturing. Oregon also accounts for 15% of the United States semiconductor workforce. Hillsboro has 4 decades of experience and a proven record of success in planning, investing, and building infrastructure to support a vibrant semiconductor ecosystem. We continuously work with our partners in utilities, colleges and universities, the Hillsboro School District, and others to innovate and support future opportunities for Oregonians within this industry and other advanced manufacturing. Kids with all different backgrounds know that there are good paying jobs here in Hillsboro in the semiconductor industry. The Hillsboro School District Apprenticeship Program is a partnership with the city, the school district, and the industry. And that's what we need to create more of. That's what the semiconductor industry will do, deliver on the American dream. Here's one example of the realization of the American dream because of our high-tech industry. It's the story of one of Hillsboro's former Youth Advisory Council members. Her parents came to America for a better life and better opportunities. And after working in the fields for a number of years, they were able to secure jobs in a high-tech clean room and in heavy equipment operation in construction. Both of these are jobs that are needed in our community, and the jobs provided stable year-round income with benefits and a retirement. The parents were also able to begin to generate generational wealth through home ownership. Their children have graduated from college, and our former YAC student is now finishing up her graduate degree at the Gerald R. Ford School of Government at the University of Michigan. Some of Hillsboro's most beloved projects, as Mr. Diaz mentioned, came from the semiconductor industry's presence in our community. Hillsboro and its partners have already delivered for Oregon's economy and Oregon's workforce in a profound way over the last 4 decades. I commend Governor Kotek for taking this next step to provide our region, and especially our youth, the opportunity for generational wealth building and a bright future, because there's no doubt in my mind that we can do even greater things for Oregon's future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Catherine Harrington, the Chair of the Washington County Commission and the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services. I'm here on behalf of both boards to support this recommended urban growth boundary expansion. Washington County has long invested in creating a robust economic ecosystem that has resulted in becoming a national center for the research and development of semiconductors and chips technology. As a result, we've seen the growth of scores of businesses in the semiconductor manufacturing industry, creating opportunities for more people to get into career paths with high wages and advancement opportunities. Knowing that the federal government has created a once-in-a-generational investment through the Federal CHIPS Act, it is essential that Oregon work to bring these federal resources here. Washington County is well positioned for success, using land that was identified for future urban use in a thorough, regional, multi-year public process that concluded in 2011 makes sense. I have a long history of working on challenging land use decisions in this region, in Washington County, and for these 373 acres. We spent years discussing and studying how to plan for our future without stepping away from our history. The governor's proposal to bring 373 acres into the UGB balances the needs of all types of industry, agriculture, and advanced manufacturing to secure federal investments for our Oregon. Decisions to expand UGBs and planning for the urbanization of resource lands is hard, but it is part of how we continue to build a thriving Oregon. The county will play an important supportive role in this process. If this land is redesignated for urban use and development, we are prepared to do our part. However, the investment in planning and infrastructure to serve this land will require funding, and we need our state and federal partners to step up to do that. Our transportation system needs the state, county, and city to work in coordination, plus systems that Clean Water Services provides for wastewater, stormwater, and water quality infrastructure. Rapidly urbanizing these lands will require a significant financial commitment to cover these costs, and we will need the help of our partners with the state, city, and special districts to capitalize on the unique opportunity the federal and state CHIPS Acts have created. We appreciate that the state legislature had the foresight to find this pathway, and that the governor has spent the time to carefully assess the need for this land. Expanding an urban growth boundary to allow for the growth that the current UGB lands cannot accommodate is hard, but the Washington County Board of Commissioners supports the work and decision of the governor to add these 373 acres to meet this historic opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Peterson.
Good evening, Lynn Peterson, Metro Council President. Thank you, Mr. Porter, and staff for being here, and pass my thanks on to Governor Kotek as well. I'm so glad to be here talking about this opportunity before us today. And I'm excited and pleased to be part of Oregon coming together to take advantage of this opportunity. When Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022, Oregon's leaders knew that we had a generational opportunity to strengthen our state's economy. They put tools in place that strike the careful balance of supporting the economy we aspire to, the economy we know we'll need in the future, while also protecting the economy we have, including the working farms and forests that provide jobs outside of our urban areas. Senate Bill 4 was a pragmatic, thoughtful way to take advantage of the opportunities presented by the CHIPS Act without sacrificing our values and our land use system. Now, Governor Kotek is proposing to make good on that work by using her authority to add 373 acres to the urban growth boundary near Hillsboro to support future job growth. It's important to note that this is a right-sized approach. We understand that there were those that wanted to bring in thousands more acres. We appreciate the measured thoughtfulness that was shown. Bringing in 373 acres can make a substantial difference in our region's economy by providing a site for what appears to be a real opportunity. By way of comparison, the 373 acres is similar to the 430 acres at Intel's Ronler Acres campus, which is home to more than 14,000 jobs. That's the power of this investment. With a mere 373 acres, we can provide another huge jolt to Oregon's economy. So I want to offer my enthusiastic support for this effort, and so does the council, for Oregon's economic recovery, for the 21st century job growth, and for the proposal Governor Kotek has put forward. I also want to add that Metro does not take this lightly. We know that our land is our most precious resource, and we must be prudent in how we use the land around our region. We support the protections envisioned in Senate Bill 4 process. Metro would advocate that if this opportunity does not pan out, the state put this land back into rural protection so that it can continue to serve our farming industry. And there need to be strong conditions placed on these acres to ensure that they are being utilized only for this transformative opportunity. We have seen far too many examples in our region of industrial land being siphoned off for other uses. There are spaces in the UGB for other types of growth that doesn't require 373 acres of contiguous track. But this opportunity is exceptional, and I commend the governor and her team, your work. Thank you.
Thank you. We have four more. I would ask State Senator Janine Solomon, House Representative Nathan Sosa, also Madison Moskowitz from Senator Wyden's office, and then we have one, just heads up, I believe one legislator online who would like to provide testimony.
Representative Wallen.
Representative Kim Wallen. So she will go after these three, and then we'll switch to public comment. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you. Hello, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. For the record, I'm Janine Solomon. I serve as the Oregon State Senator for Senate District 15, including Forest Grove, Cornelius, Hillsboro, and the Rock Creek area. And as the former co-chair of the Joint Committee on Semiconductors, I'm here today to voice my strong support for taking this important step forward to secure Oregon's economic future. Ahead of the 2023 legislative session, state leaders knew we had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take advantage of billions of dollars in federal investments from the CHIPS and Science Act that would spur growth of semiconductor and advanced manufacturing in Oregon. The Oregon Semiconductor Task Force, which included leaders like Senator Wyden and Merkley, and Congressman Bonamici, found that Oregon lacked sufficient industrial land capacity to support the expected growth of the advanced manufacturing industry. This was a bipartisan, bicameral supported bill. And when it came to land use, 1,000 Friends of Oregon was at the table. They negotiated language they agreed upon that would have removed it as a major environmental threat list and provided the governor with a limited window to incorporate a limited amount of land into the urban growth boundary. And it built safeguards and public meeting requirements into that authority. And here we are tonight. The high-tech industry is a pillar of Oregon's economy. Our state, and especially right here in Hillsboro, is home to the most important and mature semiconductor industry cluster in the country, anchored by Oregon's largest private employer, Intel. This industry employs tens of thousands of Oregonians with high-paying jobs, many that do not require advanced degrees. As the industry grows, we will see more opportunities for kids who grow up in Oregon to find jobs here and be able to stay and raise their own families. The Hillsboro School District has already started a registered youth apprenticeship program in advanced manufacturing, which provides low barrier opportunities to learn about this industry. So in close, I'll begin by saying advanced manufacturing is the future. For Oregon to be a place we all want it to be, where people have good jobs, our families are safe and healthy, and government can provide the services Oregonians have come to expect, including protection of our rural lands and other investments that will transition Oregon to a cleaner, greener future, we must have a strong economy. If Oregon loses its status as a worldwide leader in the semiconductor industry, I fear for what those negative ripple effects could be. We must take action on this generational opportunity to position Oregon as a global leader for decades to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My name is Nathan Sosa. I'm the state representative for District 30, which is Hillsboro, Helvetia, and Rock Creek. Along with Senator Solomon and Representative Wallen, who's joining us online, I was also a member of the Joint Semiconductor Committee. And in that committee, over a period of over 2 months, we had hearings every week where we heard from folks all over the state. We heard from folks who worked in the tech sector. We heard from farmers. We heard from educators and from students, from entrepreneurs, from folks all over the state who talked about what this work means to them. And in the end, we came to the conclusion that the United States was on the cusp of a major economic revolution where all of these jobs that had been outsourced for decades were going to be coming back onshore to the United States, and that Oregon was going to play an absolutely crucial role in that. Now, we didn't know at that time exactly what those future opportunities were going to be, but we knew they were on the horizon. So we designed Senate Bill 4 the way that we did to give the governor the flexibility and the tools to seize those generational opportunities if and when they arrived. And here we are. Oregon is now on the cusp of obtaining the National Semiconductor Technology Center. And if we are successful in that effort, Oregon is going to become the center for research and development for advanced semiconductors and for advanced manufacturing, not only in the country, but in the world. We will solidify our role, and we will create economic opportunities for decades to come. So what does that mean? It means that we would be attracting billions in federal investment, billions in private investment, millions in tax revenue, and thousands of good family wage, living wage jobs for Oregonians. Those are the stakes. And that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
My name is Madison Moskowitz, and I'm testifying today on behalf of Senator Ron Wyden, who couldn't be here today. I'll be reading a letter from Senator Wyden to Governor Kotek. Governor Kotek, thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony. As Oregon's senior senator and as an architect of the CHIPS and Science Act, I'm confident your proposal to expand the UGB is the right move for our state. Using your authority to expand the UGB, including up to the maximum 1,700 acres available, will ensure that Oregon fully leverages the CHIPS Act. This expansion will help Oregon compete for the National Semiconductor Technology Center site, established by the CHIPS Act to be the national hub for research and development into chips tech. The NSTC will be a long-term investment in Oregon. People want to live here. They want to work here. They want to play and grow and innovate here. And as Oregon's leaders, it's our responsibility to jump at those opportunities to secure that future for our state. And I believe that the UGB expansion does just that. The Department of Commerce will be investing billions across 3 NSTC sites, and Oregon is a finalist for one. That designation would deliver hundreds of millions in seed funding from the federal government and make Hillsboro even more of a cradle for technological innovation for decades to come. It'll be a self-sustaining public-private partnership that brings those stable, good-paying jobs and research opportunities for students and semiconductor professionals. About 30,000 Oregonians, including thousands of graduates from our schools and leading workforce development programs, already make the Silicon Forest a national powerhouse in this high-tech industry. the Biden-Harris administration has already awarded over $3 billion in CHIPS Act funds to Oregon, including for research being done at OSU, PSU, and U of O. These talents and resources, along with work by you and by the Oregon legislature to pass the Oregon CHIPS Act, the CHIPS Child Care Infrastructure Fund, and the CHIPS Research and Development Tax Credit, have prepared our state to reap the benefits of what really is a generational opportunity. And investing in the chips industry is crucial because past semiconductor shortages have hobbled our economy. Every smartphone and laptop and computer in this room, every car in the parking lot can't exist without semiconductors. Oregon is already a critical part of that global supply chain. Investing in the Silicon Forest and expanding the urban growth boundary to do so is one way we can help protect ourselves against any future breaks in the chain abroad. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we able to bring up Representative Wallen? Yes, thank you. Thank you for calling in, Representative Wallen.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Kim Wallen. I am the state representative from Medford, House District 6. So I'm about as far away from the Silicon Forest as you can get in this state, at least in terms of hours away. When I first heard about how important chips were to all the aspects of our lives, that chips are even in dishwashers, that's when my interest was piqued, and I pushed for the opportunity to be involved in this the effort and the Joint Committee on Semiconductors. I was successful to the point that I became the co-vice chair of that committee, and as a result of that, heard hours of testimony about how important the chips manufacturing is to Oregon. I knew how important it was to the nation, but I didn't really even know we had a Silicon Forest. But as a result of the hours of testimony and the opportunity to tour in Hillsboro, I learned how integral we can be to the nation's defense, and that includes economic stability as well as just national defense stability. So I was critically involved in that. And as I toured around the Hillsboro area, it became obvious that there were going to be some barriers with our current land use law being able to keep contiguous pieces of land so that we could properly attract the companies that would want to set up business here or expand the businesses they had. And so it became obvious that we were going to have to do some rejiggering of our current land use laws. And I was concerned that we did it within the framework as much as possible of those land use laws. And that's why there were parameters put on that. It was given to the governor, but we're having this public hearing today because of those safeguards. That's one of the things that's a hallmark of our land use system is public hearings and well-considered, thoughtful use of the laws that we have. This will go beyond those laws, but I want to do it in a thoughtful way. And I do believe with all my heart and thoughts that this is what we're doing here now. I'm grateful to the governor for exercising this power that we gave her. I'm grateful to this process that we're going through. I respect everybody's opinion, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to chime in and support the use of this authority that is being requested. And I hope that we'll have a favorable outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We're going to now move to public comment, and the goal here is to switch back and forth in groups of 3, both pro and con. And there's a few neutrals, and we'll try and get them in. And there are a few people who had signed up in advance on virtually who we will bring in first. But we first want to start with 2 groups of 3. If I can call Jim McCauley, Elizabeth Mazzara Myers, and Thomas Vanderzan. And then I just would give a heads up that after those 3, we'd like Blaine Ackley, Melissa Bustamante, and Lucas Jett. And I apologize in advance if I've mispronounced anyone's name. Jim.
Great. Thank you very much. Bingo. Thank you very much, Jim McCauley, Legislative Director of the League of Oregon Cities. Happy to be here tonight and offer support for not just Senate Bill 4, but obviously the implementation and the executive order proposed by Governor Kotek. I can certainly draw from experience the value that incentives bring to communities. Policy decisions that create opportunities definitely pay off. And we've certainly seen that since Senate Bill 4 was passed in 23. LOC supported Senate Bill 4 in 2003 session because of the profound impact that the high-tech sector has had in Oregon and the potential for continued impact in the future. The semiconductor industry in Oregon exists in just about every corner of the state now. I remember being across the street a little over a decade ago when Washington County was considering a 30-year, $100 billion investment from Intel. They made the right decision then, and there's an opportunity at this step to make another right decision to continue on with the investments that Oregon has made in the semiconductor industry and help secure this as a continued hub for semiconductor research and development in the future. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide comments tonight. Take any questions.
Thank you. We're gonna go to Elizabeth, please.
Thanks for the opportunity, Elizabeth Mazar-Myers, Executive Director of Westside Economic Alliance. WA represents, we are a public-private partnership representing hundreds of employers as well as jurisdictions from throughout the region. As has been stated, the Federal CHIPS Act and the subsequent Oregon CHIPS Act created generational opportunity to create economic growth. We've already seen some investments as noted by Vince Porter earlier in the presentation. However, the governor's authority to supersede is a critical element to ensure we continue to land federal investments for our state. The need for this expedited process is critical, and WA supports the issuing of an executive order in support of this expansion. I would like to suggest that I think it's time for us to move past the false dichotomy that Oregon can only either care about farm and forest or create economic opportunities for the middle-class jobs. Bringing 373 acres of land into the urban growth boundary through this process does not put at risk the entire Oregon land use system or create regional concerns about sprawls. It's a strategic move at a time when Oregon needs to be nimble and react to the opportunity being presented. I'd like to note who probably is not here tonight. We've heard from a lot of folks about generational investments, but it's the next generation who will have the opportunity to move in and through the middle class because of bold policy choices like the one we hope is made in the coming months. We encourage visionary action today to provide extraordinary opportunities for tomorrow. In conclusion, WA supports the superseding proposal. We encourage the governor to lean into her legal authority per SB 4 to bring this land into the UGB. This decision will signal an embracing of a future filled with opportunity, innovation, and prosperity that will extend well beyond this region and provide growth opportunity for all Oregonians. WA will providing additional testimony that will be written. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom.
My name is Thomas Vander Zanden. I'm residing at 15903 Northwest Logie Trail, Hillsboro, Oregon. Career-wise, I've been involved in planning and development for over 50 years in both the public and the private sectors. In particular, I was assigned the implementation of Senate Bill 100 for Clackamas County clear back in 1978. I also served as president of Walter J. Vander Zanden Farms since 1991. I'm in favor of adding the 373 acres to the Metro UGB. Still, adding the 373 acres is like putting Oregon on first base at best. To get the home plate and have a research center and or a chips plant locate here, the 1,700 acres needs to be included in the UGB. Senate Bill 100 was all about thinking ahead and doubling down on good planning. Only adding the 373 acres is short-sighted and sets Oregon up for failure to take advantage of this once-in-a-generation opportunity. Now I'd like to spend a short bit of time illustrating a couple of geographic and development features that I think contribute to good planning in North Hillsboro. Urban on three sides, the fourth a floodplain. My friend will be pointing to the exhibit. The 1,700 acres is surrounded by urban uses on three sides. To the north is the city of North Plains, To the south and to the east is the city of Hillsboro. The fourth side of the 1,700 acres is the Mackay Creek floodplain, making for an excellent separation of farm uses from urban uses. It is also the case that the land west of the floodplain is inside the Tuolumne Valley Irrigation District, and the land east is dryland farming. Modest size. The 1,700 acres is a modest size compared to UGB expansions of the past. Adding the 1,700 acres amounts to less than 1/10 the size of the over 17,000 acre 2002 urban growth boundary expansion. Additionally, Washington County has far less urban reserves than Clackamas County, but is the fastest growing county. Transportation. Jackson School Road is already functioning as an urban arterial. Including all 1,700 acres will provide for the realignment of Jackson School Road as it goes north from the current city limits, thereby avoiding double loading of Evergreen Road. Including the 1,700 acres inside UGB would make possible the efficient expansion of Jackson School Road to a 4-lane arterial by exacting right-of-way and financial support from both sides. Gravity sewer. Including the 1,700 acres makes possible a much more efficient and reliable sewer system, avoiding expensive and energy-dependent pump stations. Bike and pedestrian trails. The Hillsboro Park system has plans to connect all of North Hillsboro with a bike and pedestrian trail system along Mackay Creek and Wyble Creeks. These trails are compatible with urban uses and incompatible with agricultural operations. Very quickly. The state of Oregon has a reputation of thinking ahead and doubling down on good planning. In this case, good planning rationale is only achievable if all 1,700 acres is included inside the UGB. Good planning did take place in 2011 and then was
Tom,
completely trashed by
we
the
want to
Grand
be
Bargain.
fair, and we're going to keep everyone to 3 minutes.
That's
So
it. Thank you.
I appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you. Okay, so Blaine Ackley, Melissa Bustamante, and then Lucas Jetton. Do you want to say the who we're bringing next on?
Yeah, on deck online, Duke Shepard, Keith Levitt, and Monique Claiborne.
Blaine, do you want to?
Governor Kotek, my name is Blaine Ackley, and I have lived in Hillsboro for the past 35 years. I voted for you in the last election. You may recall that in 2011, we had the Grand Bargain that established the urban growth boundaries in Washington County. This was supposed to last for 50 years. But a mere 13 years later, here we come with another expansion to the urban growth boundary. This is a bad idea for many reasons, but I would like to concentrate my comments this evening to just 4 major considerations. One is environmental. Computer chip plants and chip research facilities use massive amounts of water. For example, Intel currently uses over 1 million gallons of water per month, and they don't even pay their fair share for that. In addition, our air quality suffers from all the pollutants those plants pour into our air, and when the pollutants go beyond the allowable limits, the company pays a small fine and gets slapped on the wrist. Why isn't environmental assessment required for this action? Number 2, infrastructure strains. Our housing costs and needs are ballooning, and all of this growth makes it worse traffic at a time when there's not enough money for the roads, the pedestrian, the public transportation, and the bike paths that we need to keep up. An expansion of the urban growth boundary will just exacerbate these needs. Bad planning. The proposed new addition to the urban growth boundary establishes an island that is not really contiguous to the existing boundary, thereby ensuring that this is just a first step for another proposed boundary expansion a few years off. And overall, we must have a holistic view of the effects of this. We live with lead raining down on us daily from the propeller aircraft at the Hillsboro Airport. This results in an increased incidence of lead poisoning effects on the land, our citizens, and our children. Then there are the current emission infractions from Intel for which there is no mitigation. Our water usage rates are rising And even though the biggest user, Intel, doesn't pay their fair share. Overall, the proposed expansion is a recipe for disaster for our region, our people, our infrastructure, and our governmental budgets. Thank you.
Can you hear me? My name is Lucas Jett, and I moved here 3 years ago from New York City. And I've grown fond of the Willamette region of Oregon. It makes me feel like I can breathe easy. And I love the land, the farms, the air quality, all of the little shops where I can purchase locally grown produce and arts and crafts. My job is in the tech industry. I'm a technician at Intel. As a tech worker, I ask, why is Intel allowed to accept billions of dollars of taxpayer-funded grants and then lay off 15,000 workers? Is this the type of behavior that you're rewarding? Another thing is that more of the direct hires within my company are being replaced by contract workers who often receive less pay and no health benefits. And you say that expanding the urban growth boundary will create more jobs, but I see through this facade. This plan will allow Intel and tech companies, tech agencies, temp agencies like Gliss, Westerwood, and WGM Star to exploit many more workers and cheat them out of sustainable, secure employment. And I'm not anti-development, but is the tech industry going to pay for that new sewer line? You talk about family wage jobs, which makes me think that you're disconnected from what a family wage is for a technician or a cleaner. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Bustamante. I'm here today representing the Willamette Valley Workers Benefit Council, a delegate body of over 15,000 low-income farm, seasonal, and service workers. We live and work in this community, and we are opposed to policies that our community makes our community unlivable and unaffordable. We are the workers that harvest crops, tend to the plant nurseries, cook and serve the meals, maintain the yards, and help build the homes. We are here to call on Governor Tina Kotek to reject the use of her unilateral powers to expand the urban growth boundary and include 373 acres north of Hillsboro. Vital agricultural land and employment must be protected against the short-term profiteering. The county and state are giving tax breaks to large corporations to put in data farms and other installations that push out agriculture and jobs. This increases the tax burden of infrastructure and services that then fall on those who can least afford it, farm workers and other low-paid workers, as well as small landlords who must raise rents. We know the effects of these policies because we live them, or rather, we survive them. Members of our council are among the unprecedented 4,700 families who Portland General Electric shut off in April. Utility costs are increasing because of the massive amount of power consumed by data farms and big tech. The government frequently refers us to utility and rental assistance programs that are out of funds. The city of Hillsboro shut off water to dozens of low-income families every month. We come home from work all day in the field and can't even take a shower or have a glass of water, while the typical data center uses 3 to 5 million gallons of water per day. Washington County shut down all the public health clinics in 2015 after giving millions in tax breaks to large tech companies. The city of Hillsboro cut all school bus routes to families within 1 mile of school. Our school classes are too big. We no longer have librarians. Our school nurses work at multiple schools, making it impossible to really do their jobs. These are all problems that are consequences of the state of Oregon's big tech welfare program. At the state level, you refuse to enforce wage and civil rights laws for tens of thousands of workers. The Bureau of Labor and Industries, BOLI, has only 10 investigators for the entire state. Yet the state has refused to provide additional funding despite the loud and clear request from Labor Commissioner Christina Stephenson. It is outrageous that for the government to exercise unilateral powers to boost short-term profits of the few, while not even ensuring that the workers of the state get paid what they are rightfully owed. 8 of our members have wage theft claims from BOLI totaling $71,320 dating back to December of 2023, yet BOLI hasn't moved on any of them. And by their own admission, they have failed to collect $5 million that they have ordered employers to pay over the past 8 years. Corporate tax breaks diminish state revenues for agencies such as BOLI, resulting in mountains of unanswered wage theft and civil rights claims, and opening the door for unscrupulous employers to violate the laws with impunity. Boley has experienced a
You
2008
said-
increase, I'll be finished soon. 2008 increase in wage sled claims for 2020 and 2024, and has failed to recover 40% of the back wages that they have ordered employers to pay.
Lisa, we're trying to keep
I'll be
everyone
done
the
soon.
same
I'll
3
be done
minutes.
soon. I'll be done
We're
soon.
gonna,
I think it's only fair.
everybody gets 3 minutes.
Insurances from the government's office about the current plan are not credible following the experience of Project Azalea, in which 330 acres of farmland were brought into the urban growth boundary under the promises of tens of thousands of jobs.
Please, let's,
I'll be
we
done
want
soon.
to,
I'll
no,
be done soon.
ma'am,
The major
we're
employer
trying
of
to
government
keep
promise never
this to be fair,
materialized, and now
and everybody should get, thank you. I understand your concerns about Boley, and I do appreciate that. And you're welcome to also submit your full testimony. Thank you.
So we're going to move to online testimony. First, we'll hear from Duke Shepard, then Keith Levitt, and Monique Claiborne. Duke, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. For the record, my name is Duke Shepard. I'm a Senior Policy Director with Oregon Business and Industry and the Manufacturing Council of Oregon. OBI and the Manufacturing Council of Oregon appreciate and support this prudent, rational, and decisive action under the provisions of Senate Bill 4. This is a pivotal moment. It positions the state for a future of economic strength and opportunity with the fullest possible range of jobs and upward mobility for Oregonians. The American Community Survey recently showed that Oregon has 18% of its workforce working remotely at home. This high number of folks in the laptop class are only able to work at home because of advances in semiconductors such as those pioneered here in Oregon. For the 82% of Oregonians not working remotely, it's crucial to create good jobs for those who need them, and those jobs have to be located somewhere. This requires usable, developable land. Oregon relies on traded sector manufacturing businesses and jobs more than other states, but we do so despite public policy, not because of it. OBI just released a report on the state of manufacturing in Oregon, and unfortunately, the state of the industry is not where we'd like it to be. As important as this action is today, the fact that an industry-specific bill with a one-time special procedure is even necessary tells us a great deal. It was notable in the release of the Clean Tech report by the governor's office on September 24th that a map of federally subsidized investments in clean tech, for which Oregon has great aspirations, had only 2 projects listed out of 340. That's about $128 billion in investments, and Oregon is largely an afterthought. Oregonians shouldn't be an afterthought. The 373-acre industrial expansion provided for in this proposal represents a critical first opportunity for the state to shape its future and secure a vibrant economic landscape for all Oregonians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Keith Levitt.
Good evening. I'm Keith Levitt, and I reside in Wilsonville and have been a long part of the industrial land conversation in Oregon with my work with the Port of Portland over the last 25 years. I also served on the Semiconductor task force and was very involved in all of the efforts to bring Senate Bill 4 forward. I'm very much in support of the recommendation. This is a balanced approach. There are really good arguments to bring in 1,000 or more acres with this special authority, but the governor has certainly taken a more measured, balanced approach with the 374 acres. Make no mistake, we really do have an industrial land problem. We have a shortage of large industrial sites, 50 acres and above, that are suitable for advanced manufacturing, clean tech, climate tech, semiconductor industry. And we are really not yielding the kinds of sites in our urban growth boundaries that we need to be competitive for tomorrow's economy. So with that, I want to encourage support of the recommendation that is going forward, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
the next three.
Yes, on deck, before Monique goes, on deck, Malik McKenzie, RJ Cook, and Wendy Mortensen. But first, Monique, please go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Monique Claiborne, CEO of Greater Portland, Inc., the economic development agency responsible for touting the region's competitiveness to attract trader sector companies. I also co-chaired the Tax and Incentives Committee for the Semiconductor Task Force. In my role, I've seen the immense economic impact that semiconductor projects have on a region. A single large facility can generate 1,500 high-paying jobs with average annual wages exceeding $150,000, far above Oregon's state average. Beyond direct employment, each facility drives significant indirect job creation in the supply chain, professional services, construction, and infrastructure sectors, multiplying the positive economic effects. However, I have also witnessed far too many missed opportunities, missed jobs, missed tax revenue, and missed economic growth due to the persistent shortage of suitable land for large-scale semiconductor projects in Oregon. Other states, fully aware of the fierce competition, are positioning themselves to capture these projects, and they are succeeding because they have the land and infrastructure ready to go. We cannot afford to fall further behind. Governor Kotek's proposal to release 373 acres of land in Hillsboro from the UGB is not just timely, it's urgent. This decision could be the turning point in ensuring Oregon's future competitiveness in the global semiconductor industry and reinforcing our role in national security. The economic benefits are clear. For every direct job created, an additional 4.89 jobs will be generated in the broader economy. This is a massive multiplier effect that benefits not just Hillsboro, but creates opportunities for all Oregonians. We have the chance to lead in this critical moment, ensuring that these opportunities don't slip away to other states, but stay right here, driving growth and prosperity for the entire state. This is an opportunity we cannot afford to delay. The global semiconductor industry is moving fast, and if we do not act now to release this land, we risk losing out on projects that could define Oregon's economic future for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Malik McKenzie is up next, followed by RJ Cook and Wendy Mortensen. Malik, please go ahead.
Malik has been unmuted, but she's not unmuting her microphone. Also, I do not see RJ Cook on the line. If you are named something else other than RJ Cook, please rename yourself and I'll look for you again.
Hello.
There's Malik.
I'm sorry about that. There we go. My name is Malik McKenzie. I live in Hillsboro and work at Intel on the Rollers Acres campus, and I'm testifying to express my deep concern over the proposal to allow private industry to establish operations on our community's pristine farmland. Our farmland is a precious resource that can provide not only fresh, locally grown produce, but also contributes to the character and beauty of our community. Converting this land for industrial use would be a significant loss that would have far-reaching implications for generations to come. It is important to note that Intel has received significant public funding, both state and federal, indicating that our community has already made a substantial investment into Intel's success. Moreover, Intel has been in the news recently for a massive layoff of 15% of its workforce. This will be in addition to the 10,000 person layoff that happened at the end of 2022. Should a company that has bled 25,000 jobs in 2 years and potentially upended just as many lives by having done so, be given even more investment? The farmland we're giving up would have to lead to the creation of at least 25,000 plus jobs before it can be argued that the community has actually gained anything, as opposed to just getting back what Intel has lost. Additionally, it is worth noting that land is not the gating factor determining Intel's success. One of the most advanced semiconductor research centers in the country, located in New York, covers only 73 acres. Intel and other members of private industry do not need 5 times the acreage in order to succeed in creating a national semiconductor technology center. Intel has a significant amount of undeveloped industrial zone land they can use, which is already near their pre-existing campuses, and will be far easier to connect to pre-existing sewage, stormwater, and power delivery systems. Many companies thrive in urban and suburban areas without the need for vast tracts of farmland. Intel can explore alternative locations, including those they already own the land of, and if they want to have more land for an NSTC. I urge our elected officials to take this as a once-in-a-generation chance to stand up to private industry on behalf of the constituents and say enough is enough. I yield my time.
Thank you. Is RJ Cook?
He's not. This is Wendy.
Okay, yes, then we'll move to Wendy Mortensen.
Yes, Wendy Mortensen, North Plains, Oregon. And I support high-tech industrial development for Oregon and for the United States as a whole. The important factor is that development should not be at the expense of other thriving industries. It should be well planned in urban areas and should uphold citizens' planning laws and expectations. Hillsboro's proposal meets none of these. Their proposal asks for 373 acres of prime farmland outside their urban boundary. This land is the best land in the world, the richest land in the, actually not only locally, but in the world. And I know this because I farm near it. We want to continue to farm, but taking more farmland that's not needed for industry will affect our supporting services and labor supply. Hillsboro has industrial land within their urban area zoned for that use. My husband and I have spent 40 years as advisors and volunteers to educate the public on the importance of agriculture and forestry industries to our country and state. We are proud of our land use planning system that has protected many of us from speculative development. Please help us keep our industry strong by upholding our land use system while promoting high-tech development within city urban areas. And some of our local elected officials have boldly proclaimed about protecting this land if it does come in with safeguards and protection devices. Well, I was here in the 80s when the county approved the land west of Cornelius Pass Road and north of Sunset Highway. And the only way they protected that, they said they were protected if it was for corporate headquarters sites. Well, look at what that land is now. It was brought into the urban growth boundary only for corporate sites. And what's there now? No corporate sites, but it's all developed. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have one more person testifying virtually just to balance it out, but I don't know if it'll take time.
Yeah, just to provide notice, Jennifer, is it Bragar? I apologize in advance. Jennifer, as soon as we are done with neutral testimony, we'll move to you.
Yeah. We have a handful of people who signed up to testify with a neutral position. So I'd like to call Jorge, and forgive me if I mispronounce it, Jorge Sepulveda, Lily, is it Becerra, and Mark Watson. And while they are, just so we can keep things moving quickly, are any of those three here? Okay. Any? Great. The gentleman who first came up, why don't you go ahead and start? Sorry, you have to, apologies. You have to hit the
All right. For the record, I'm Mark Watson. I live in Hillsboro. In the year 2000, we moved to the Hillsboro School District and I began work at Intel. I know that I wasn't at Intel very long, but I think many of the guiding principles that I learned at Intel became foundational principles for the software company that I co-founded. And after 24 years of living here, I can say I hope I never have to live anywhere else. When we arrived in Hillsboro, it had nearly doubled in size in the last decade from 37,000 to 70,000 people. We were part of that. Since we've been here, Hillsboro has now grown to over 110,000 people. The growth is primarily due to the hub of innovation that the area has become. It's not just Intel, as we saw in Dan's slide, it's dozens of other companies that create high-paying jobs in the technology sector here in Hillsboro, many of which do not require a college degree. Some of the most cutting-edge technological research in the world, not just in our country, is being done here in Hillsboro. Intel executives have said publicly that even with their current troubles, they plan to continue to expand and continue the research and innovation work here in Hillsboro. I'm grateful that our school district has been able to create connections to the tech community to provide job opportunities for our students, including the first certified apprentice program, so our high school students can earn money while gaining experience in advanced manufacturing. On a more personal note, I'm also very grateful for the many Oregonians who created our land use system before I got here. I think that system is what makes it possible for me to drive my limited range electric vehicle to get produce from a farmer that I know and eggs from chickens that I meet. I get the change is never easy, and I understand that SB4 is now part of our land use landscape. And I also realize 373 acres isn't 1,700, and that in many cases, you find the right compromise when nobody is completely happy. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for pronouncing my name in a little like dry way. So commend you for that. I want to start off by saying that I'm a resident in the proposed area. So if someone has a skin in the game, I think fair to say that is me. I want to say, when we first heard the list like of the proposal, a lot of questions spring into our minds. As you can imagine, I mean, this definitely like makes you think like, what's going to happen to us? What are we going to do? What does this mean? I just want to say like, we are not opposed to progress. We're not opposed to Oregon move forward. But also during the presentation, we heard like why this is a great opportunity for Oregon. I also asked, what is the opportunity for us, the people that live in this area? You can see like as Intel took roots here, and I heard that over and over again. I moved from Texas to Oregon, and I found a place to call home. And we found a piece of land that we now call home. And I'm saying that it's totally gonna change. We don't know how it's gonna look the same. Probably it won't. So we say like the same. What does this mean for us? We have a lot of questions. Property assessment. Are we gonna have like a Intel as a neighbor or some other industry? It's just like I ask you as you do this, engage with us and let us know what this means for us.
Thank you for hearing us and being here and dedicate all this time. I'm Lilia Becerra. I'm having mixed emotions with all this topic because I'm an owner of this piece of land. So as Jorge was saying here, we are concerned about, we are hearing a lot of the benefits that you are providing with this CHIPS Act and to the industry, but we haven't heard anything about what is happening with us as owners and farmers of these pieces of land. So I will try to request more channels of communication of what is happening with these lands, with these owners, what is going to be the benefit for us, how we are going to take care in terms of these future plans for the land. And I can also add that I'm also part of the technologies sector. So as a software engineer and manager and former employee of Intel, I have a problem with trust in this area because I have seen different kind of plans in this technology area failing over and over again. We have heard about Intel like doing layoffs year over year. As we speak, so they are like also laying off hundreds of people right now. And I have like my questions or my doubts about the success of this plant if this is awarded. So we are losing our land, but we are not even have like a clear plan that this is going to be a success at the end of the day. My concern here is what kind of benefits and if it's a clear plan of how we are going to have like these technologies, industries, bringing more jobs to here to Oregon. I haven't seen like a clear plan of how we are educating or bringing like people with this kind of skill set to make this a successful plan and be able to create this hub of technologies in this semiconductor area as well. As a former manager of Intel, like hiring was super complicated in this area. And now that we are trying to expand, I'm not seeing how this will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Do we want to?
Yeah, let's jump back to online. Jennifer, great.
And before
Thank you.
Jennifer, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jennifer Brager. I'm a partner at Tomasi Brager Dubé with over 15 years of land use and governmental law experience. Our office represents 1,000 Friends of Oregon, Farmland First, and Friends of North Plains Smart Growth. My clients call me when there is an emergency, and if one ever existed, it is right now. This proposal to expand Hillsboro's urban growth boundary would take some of the world's best farmland out of production and place it in the hands of private industrial users without any land use planning process. Moving forward with this approach would be short-sighted because it only adds to fragmentation and the ever-constant encroachment of urban uses on agricultural land. Taking the land out of farm production will only hasten the damage to agricultural communities and farming infrastructure. I am not shy about taking controversial cases and will work to ensure that our clients have the full opportunity to protect the quality of life we have in Oregon because of the urban growth boundary and land use planning processes that call for protection of irreplaceable resource land and planning for complete neighborhoods. This proposed hijacking of prime farmland for the latest shiny industrial object is completely at odds with Oregon's smart planning process. As you consider taking farmland from microchips, also consider that the massive amounts of state funds invested in agriculture would be wasted, and that you leave farmers to wither as no new land will ever become available for food and seed production. The governor's approach here is being artificially rushed to accomplish a land grab for this prime farmland that was not contemplated for 40 more years. Many members of our client group were at the table for the grand bargain that placed this land in rural reserves until 75% of the urban reserves set aside in the metro urban growth boundary were brought into cities. That hasn't happened in the first 10 years of the bargain, and there is still 40 years left to the deal. And there is no guarantee that the rural reserves ever would be brought in because of the 75% threshold. While this supposed process is meant to overcome the grand bargain, my clients will not forget and will not give up on those promises. You can be sure that if this boundary expansion moves forward, there will be a long and difficult legal battle ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call Phil Muir, Carla Callaghan, and Cindy Hodges. And then on deck, Susan Andrews, Maria Ponzi, and Fawn Hosey, I believe.
Ready to go?
Just, yeah, go ahead and hit the button.
My name's Phil Muir. Good evening. My wife and I have lived on our 40-acre farm since 1980. We live in the area that will be pretty much affected by the decision regarding the 373 acres. We live on Scotts Church Road with the western boundary being McKay Creek, and we live on the south side. So we're less than a mile from the 373 acre parcel. The governor, in her determination and notice, stated, given the concentration of semiconductor ecosystems in Hillsboro and the requirements of the industry to be proximate to key research and development facilities located in Hillsboro, no other location in the state is suitable. I am in support of the inclusion of the governor's proposed 373 acres and believe the acreage should be increased to include the full 1,700 acres in North Hillsboro. Here's why. Scotts Church Road is 1.5 miles long, and since we have moved there are now 4 commercial horse stables, a winery and tasting room, a large industrial potting soil operation, and the old Scotts Church and Cemetery within a half mile of our home. To the north, the city of North Plains has exploded towards us. From the south and east, Hillsboro's new industrial land is being developed less than a mile from our farm. Since completion of the McKay Creek Bridge and the roundabout at Jackson Road, thousands of vehicles, including semi-trucks, now use our road each day with accompanying noise and vibration. The character of this area is no longer rural. It doesn't feel like we are living in farm country. The farmer that leased our back fields and farmed our neighbors for years stopped farming it because he cannot get his farm equipment down the road. The road is now a major commuter corridor with 55 mile per hour speed limit, and it serves the expanded communities of Forest Grove, Cornelius, Hillsboro, Gaston, and Southwest Washington County. While the governor's determination only applies to the 373 acres, it also logically applies to the balance of North Hillsboro. After the 373 acres moves into the UGB, the remaining acreage of North Hillsboro will always be the location of choice for future growth of industry. The city of Hillsboro spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars planning the development of the entire 1,700 acres. The governor should include the 373 in the UGB and increase the acreage so the remaining portion of North Hillsboro is also included. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carla Callahan. I'm a local resident, a retired Intel engineer, a blueberry farmer, and owner of property in North Hillsboro. I'm here to urge the governor to include the 373 acres, but take a bold step further, include all 1,700 acres of the North Hillsboro land to send a clear message that Oregon is ready to welcome new semiconductor industry beyond Intel and beyond just the research center. The Oregon Semiconductor Competitive Task Force recommendation states that the most critical factor in site selection is planning and development certainty. This means there must be a clear designation of future development land that's sufficient for any size of these larger size industries that want to come in order for it to be a prime contender. I fear that the measured approach does not provide that certainty for growth, which will then reduce Oregon as a strong contender for this growth. Testimony before the Joint Committee on Semiconductors provided evidence of the broad statewide and workforce benefits that can occur if Oregon opens its doors to this unique opportunity by designating sufficient land that will make it both a strong contender and allow the most cost-effective and energy-efficient infrastructure to be planned and built. Businesses, educational institutes, labor unions,
The reason we went through that process of creating that was so that landowners could predict that
a Hillsborough High School graduate, and a few other things. First of all, I just want to recognize that it's unfortunate the governor's not here this evening. I was really hoping to see her on such a major issue as this, that she could be present. It's unfortunate she's not here. It's also unfortunate that this hearing is being held in the middle of our harvest season. For many of us who are farming, this is a really difficult time for us to come in and testify with just 2 hours for public comment. I am very much opposed to this based on the precedent that it sets. I do believe that this is political candy. We've been hearing about it this evening, jobs and money. It's super sexy. I'm pro-business, I get it. But what I don't get is that I think people have forgotten where they live. We live in the Willamette Valley. This is an incredibly special place. I actually prefer real forests over silicone forests, and we have them. We can maintain them if we wanted to. I'm one of the earliest wine growers in the state. My family established a winery back in 1969 in Washington County. At that time, my parents worked very hard to protect the farmland so that we would have a thriving wine industry, which, by the way, is a sustainable industry for generations. It's something I've been hearing a lot about this. The messaging is really strong here about the once in a generation opportunity. What we do as farmers, we have opportunities for multiple generations, not just one generation, multiple generations, but we have to protect the land. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about. It's important. And I do realize that we're only talking about this small 375 acres, 373 acres. But the precedent that this sets is dangerous to our state and to the future generations. For those who live and prosper by the land as I do, and many of us do, land is something that we don't take for granted. Land is something that we see as a privilege, as a gift. It's not that we get it. We have to protect it. We have a responsibility for that. The Oregon wine industry, yes, it is small in comparison to what we're talking about today. I get it. We're only contributing $8 billion to our state's economy. We only employ 40,000 people. But what we do is we drive our state's economy in a healthy way, using our natural resources sustainably for future generations. And just because we're a wine industry doesn't mean we just stay here. We're around the world. We have produced some of the highest quality wines in the world, and we are the envy of the world because of this. And it's because of the land. It exists because of the UGB that protected us and enabled this industry to thrive, and so many other agriculture to thrive. It exists because of our very unique place in the world. Maybe you don't know this. The climate, the soils are A-class. Semiconductors do not require A-class prime farmland to thrive. Agriculture, high-valued agriculture, it does, and we have it. I strongly urge the governor to consider the thousands of industrial zoned acres across many other Oregon cities and towns who might actually benefit from this kind of economy. There are 4 sites with more than 500 acres.
Marie,
Yes, I'm going to wrap up. I really urge the governor to consider other options because we have a future generation to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Fawn?
My name is Fawn Hosey.
I'm sorry.
So I gotta turn on my mic. My name is Fawn Hosey. I live north of Hillsboro in the rural area. And I am strongly opposed to this proposal. It's growth that's not smart. It's greedy. It's too much. It's too fast. It's disrespectful. It doesn't follow a process. The public is pretty much shut out in the 20 days that we have available without being able to study plans or interact with officials. You know, and I wonder, why do we want to grow so fast? We don't have an employment problem, except when Intel is laying off people. So we can't really depend on their employment. Citizen involvement has been discounted. We might not be in quite such a fix if citizens had been listened to more carefully. In testimonies over the urban and rural reserves process, citizens warned officials about the soils, which led to them not listening, but designating prime soil, the land that we're talking about tonight, prime farmland was designated as urban reserves, using pseudo factors in which dry land was discounted. It doesn't matter that it's dry. The soils are the best in the world. Bring them just a little bit of water, just a little bit of what you might be bringing to industry. You can grow anything. And not only that, but they're farmed continually as dry land farming. There are a lot of crops that require dry land. They require the dry summers. They rotate, and they keep restoring the land, making it richer. But the process has been disingenuous. While the public hasn't been well listened to, so it went to appeals. The court came down with the ruling, and the grand bargain was born in the out-of-court settlement after the 2011 urban reserves were remanded. And that's out-of-court settlement was codified in the legislature in House Bill 4078. So here we are tonight, and I learned that in the back rooms, they call a grand bargain the grand giveaway? You know, so that's symptomatic of what's happening, that we're not reading, we're not hearing, we're not reading, we're not listening to how our community really feels. These officials they're looking toward the next biennium, the next election cycle, the next decade. We're really not considering what our needs are for the future centuries. And every decision we make is going to have an impact on what's left.
Thank you. Okay, do we want to go?
We're gonna
do we have
move
the
to
ability go
online.
virtual, and then once we get off the online group, we will go to I believe that is to Tony and Wallace, Amy Vanderzan, and Lori or Lonnie Wren.
So online, we have Greg Anderson, Jesse Aronson, and Toby Hodges. The first three. Greg, you're up.
Thank you. My name is Greg Alderson, and I serve as Manager of State Government Affairs at Portland General Electric. PGE has a long history of partnering with infrastructure providers and local governments to support traded sector and industrial growth, including semiconductor and advanced manufacturing. In 2022, our CEO, Maria Pope, co-chaired the Semiconductor Task Force with then Governor Brown and Senator Wyden. We're pleased to support additional industrial land to enable growth in Oregon's semiconductor industry. As an electric utility, one of our most fundamental missions is to support the prosperity of all Oregon's residents and businesses. Investment in new facilities, such as semiconductor fabs and research and development centers, will require availability of industrial land and the necessary infrastructure to support those facilities. Without additional development-ready land, Oregon will not be able to grow its strong semiconductor industry cluster or take full advantage of the Federal CHIPS Act. Thank you for the opportunity to offer our testimony.
Jesse Aronson, I apologize.
Yes, name's Jesse Aronson. I'm speaking on behalf of Work Systems today. We are the workforce board serving the city of Portland, Washington, and Multnomah counties, and our mission is to coordinate a regional workforce system that supports individual prosperity and business competitiveness. For the past 2 years, Work Systems has partnered with the City of Hillsboro, Washington County, Portland Community College, the State of Oregon, WorkSource, and semiconductor manufacturers in Washington and Multnomah counties to deliver the 2-week Quick Start to Semiconductor training program. The program is intended to increase representation of women and people of color in the industry and offers low barrier access to these jobs for our communities. 79% of Quick Start participants identify as people of color or female. And in an industry where 68% of the workforce is male and 75% is white, Quick Start is an innovative solution to the semiconductor workforce shortage by creating access to entry-level semiconductor jobs, prioritizing women, people of color, and low-income individuals. To date, 360 participants have completed the course, with 60% of graduates obtaining employment and 98% employed in the semiconductor field. Additionally, many graduates have opted to continue their education in lieu of pursuing employment that will ultimately help them gain higher skilled, higher paying jobs. Oregon's robust semiconductor industry has centered its activity in Hillsboro for the last quarter of a century. Anchored by Intel, Hillsboro has experienced a steady increase of semiconductor equipment suppliers and manufacturers who continue to expand and create jobs of diverse skill and education levels. The ability to support employers and grow key industries directly leads to more job opportunities and higher wages, supporting housing attainability and livability for residents and their families. $6 billion in total payroll generated by the semiconductor industry in the state helps pay for schools, roads, infrastructure, and housing. Work Systems supports the state's efforts to help secure billions of federal dollars and further Oregon's economic prosperity goals through the opportunities provided by the Federal CHIPS and Science Act and the Oregon CHIPS Act. Thank you.
And Toby Hodges.
Thank you to Mr. Porter and to the whole of the committee for taking public comment into consideration. My name is Toby Hodges. I'm 26 and I grew up on a farm within the 373 acres identified as potential UGB land that we're discussing today. I support the expansion for these 373 acres into the UGB, and I also urge for the full 1,700 acres discussed a few times this evening to be included to provide multimodal transportation, public parks, and higher density housing that the state and the city desperately need, while only using a very small percentage of the 15.9 million acres of farmland in Oregon. Over the summers as a kid, I worked on the farm selling berries to people that I picked. And when I went to high school at Glencoe, I joined the first robotics team where I learned to use Autodesk Inventor for computer-aided drafting and design. My summers in high school were spent at a very small semiconductor parts manufacturing company run by a robotics teammate's parents. To put that another way, my very first job was in the semiconductor industry thanks to where I lived. The summer before my senior year, I got an internship offer from Autodesk thanks to my work in FIRST Robotics. And 2 years ago, I was hired by Autodesk full-time as a senior software engineer, thanks in large part to my internship years before. Because of the wages associated with that industry, my wife and I are now able to own our home. I am where I am today, thanks in huge part to the semiconductor industry's presence in the exact acreage discussed tonight. I hope to see the same opportunities presented to many other Oregonians thanks to this incredible once-in-a-generation opportunity that is now in the hands of Governor Kotek. Utilizing this land will lead to many future generations of prosperity and is a historic opportunity for younger people like me. Please seize this opportunity to its fullest. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more person online that is listed as opposed, and to keep it balanced, I'm going to ask, would you want to call that person?
Glenn Fee, you will be up next, followed by.
And then followed by the gentleman, is it Laura Hoover and Miki Blizzard? You can come up and be ready to testify.
Glenn, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Oh, great. Thank you. I apologize. I didn't realize that was actually a call for me to testify. I'm Glenn Fee, Executive Director of Tualatin Riverkeepers. I'm here to speak on behalf of our more than 500 Washington County members. Our state and our region has long prided itself in having a strong process when it comes to urban planning. Senate Bill 100 requires cities and counties to prepare comprehensive land use plans and zoning ordinances that meet various state goals, while preserving the principle of local responsibility for land use decisions. Tonight, I heard a number of our elected officials and city staffers cite the strong public process that led to this proposal to bring 373 acres into the urban growth boundary. But this process has flown in the face of Senate Bill 100. The governor's blanket authority to override local land use decisions in SB 4 is contrary to the regular order of UGB expansion. I heard one of our elected officials this evening cite the strong public process that we're engaged in. Hillsboro and Washington County residents, including so many of us who are concerned about this potential expansion, had all of about 7 days to prepare for this evening's testimony, whereas proponents have been preparing for months. That's not the Oregon way. Finally, I wanted to address comments that have alluded to only 373 acres being brought into the urban growth boundary. While 373 acres may only represent, I think it was 0.17% cited earlier, of our regional's urban growth boundary, this is one of a number of proposed expansions into prime farmland across Washington County. From Sherwood to King City to Shoals to North Plains, farmers, residents, small business owners are incredibly concerned about a death by 1,000 cuts in our county. Our open spaces in Washington County, a significant part of the reason why so many choose to live here, are quickly being swallowed. Are we willing to trade thousands of acres of prime farmland for increased sprawl that threatens why so many people moved here? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Hi, I am Laura Hoover, and I want to start with a challenge to the 2010 data, because we live in a materially different world than what existed at that time, and the changes we've seen make retaining farmland more important than ever. In the last 5 years alone, we have seen how easy it is for our grocery shelves to run dry, and how important it is how important our local farms were in feeding our community during COVID. We are seeing historic hurricanes in the east, fires in the west, and drought in the Midwest consecutively due to unaddressed climate change, which will continue to challenge our food supply chains. We are seeing material shifts in global norms and political alignment that challenge the stability we used to rely on. This land serves this community as an investment in resilience as we face local and global challenges, an asset that if traded off cheaply cannot be regained. Additionally, Intel is not the company or community partner that they were in 2010. Our continued investment in a single company that has not shown itself to be a good partner and whose ability to recover is in question ignores the lessons on failure to diversify of Detroit and innumerable factory towns whose companies failed or left. I started at Intel in 2008, and I was proud as we went through the recession, watching leadership lead by example, take care of employees and community, and lay out a clear strategy of how we would come out stronger. I can no longer be proud. Since the Q2 financial announcement, Intel's credit was downgraded to BBB+, which is at the bottom of the investment level ratings. They will be removed from the Dow Jones, likely within the next 6 months, and the stock continues to hover around $20, which are all indicative of a lack of trust by the markets in their ability to execute. This is the harvest of not having strong leadership at Intel since Paul Otellini left in 2015. Ongoing lack of clear strategy, execution, and leadership has left us in the third consecutive year of layoffs, despite the passage of the CHIPS Act and austerity, whose cost was carried mostly by the employees in our community. We see a company hemorrhaging expertise, unable to execute on the opportunities in front of it, while taking on debt at an alarming rate. In the middle of this, they are asking us to sacrifice more. Despite innovations that allow smaller footprints and their inefficient use of the land they already have and what is available within the boundary, they're asking for something more of us. Intel has actively contributed to the decline of real wages adjusted for inflation and productivity, with ever-increasing demands and stress on employees, leading to negative mental and physical health outcomes for employees, myself included. Any new investment needs to address our lack of diversity in employers and enforceable expectations that expand what has been previously accepted in the face of the harmful behavior that has been allowed.
Good evening. My name is Miki Blizzard. I live in unincorporated Washington County. I've lived there since 1978. I've been involved in transportation and land use issues in the region since 1989. I strongly oppose the inclusion of this 373-acre parcel into the UGB for Semiconductor. I agree with many of the concerns that were outlined this evening, particularly Laura's good comments there, Maria Ponzi's about sustainability, and Fawn's about process. My question is size. Why 373 acres? There's been no information given to the public as to why this is a good size for a semiconductor plant. Location. Why this particular parcel of land? There's no indication that other parcels have been considered. There's has been no public discussion or information given to the public about why this particular location on this particular size. As someone stated earlier, New York State has a site of 73 acres. That's 1/5 of the 373. The public knows nothing about this. All they know is that the governor has set her sights on this particular parcel of land, and it certainly smacks of a lack of trust of what's going on here. Maria Ponzi talked about the fact that this has been referred to several times, I think I counted it 12 times this evening, as a generational opportunity. And she spoke eloquently about the multi-general, not only opportunity, but the existing multi-generational resource that this land provides, that our farmland provides. You've heard from people who say, oops, 373 acres is not enough. You really should go for the full 1,700 acres. Where does that figure come from? What kind of discussions have been going on about this? Because the inclusion of a smaller parcel is obviously the camel's nose under the tent. Now, people can make profits from their property, that's just fine, but not at the expense of Oregon's land use process and not at the expense of the sustainability of not only our agricultural industry, but our entire state. This is a resource that provides better air, better water quality instead of stripping those things from our resources. So I urge you, I know Senate Bill 4 has a very expedited process. And there are few requirements for more information to come out to the public. But if you want a good product, you will need a good process. And you can't get there without a good process. You need to bring the public along. You need to give them the information as to why these decisions are being made, rather than having them say things like, the grand bargain was really the grand giveaway. And with such concerns about Intel's value as a good partner, about Hillsboro squandering a lot of their industrial land, I suggest that you open up the process and answer some of these questions publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will go with Titonian Wallace, Amy Vanderzand, Lori Wren, and then on deck, Jeff Scott, Denise Clare, and Aaron Nichols. Okay, when you're ready, just hit your mic button.
Good evening. I'm Titonian Wallace, Chair of the Board of Directors for the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to express our strong support for the governor's use of executive authority under Senate Bill 4 for the expansion of the urban growth boundary in Hillsboro. The governor's recent decision to designate 373 acres for semiconductor use is both timely and critical to Oregon's future as a leader in the semiconductor industry. This expansion positions Oregon to compete for significant federal investment, including potential funding from the Federal CHIPS Act, which could bring nearly $1 billion in support for a semiconductor research hub. This opportunity offers an incredible advantage to our state, allowing us to further solidify our role as a global leader in advanced manufacturing technology. Hillsboro's Silicon Forest already boasts a highly concentrated supply chain for semiconductors, making it the ideal location for such an expansion. The new designation opens the door to increased investment in research, development, and manufacturing, creating high-quality jobs that will offer tremendous opportunities for our local workforce. The expansion ensures that the next generation of talent can thrive right here in Washington County, further bolstering our economy. However, while this expansion is a step in the right direction, it is not enough. To truly capitalize on Oregon's potential as a global hub for semiconductors and advanced manufacturing, we must consider bringing additional land into the urban growth boundary. The demand for semiconductor-related facilities and supporting industries continues to grow rapidly, and without enough available land, we risk losing out on future investments and opportunities. The current expansion is a great start, but it must be a part of a larger, more comprehensive approach to ensure our region can meet the demands of the global market and maintain its competitive edge. By leveraging this expansion and advocating for more land to be brought into the urban growth boundary, Oregon can attract both private and public sector investments on an even larger scale, ensuring we remain competitive not just nationally, but globally. The Washington County Chamber fully supports the governor's actions and urges additional land to be included in the urban growth boundary to meet the growing demands of this dynamic industry. Together, these actions will bolster the Silicon Forest and strengthen Oregon's leadership in the semiconductor industry for years to come. Thank you.
My name is Amy Vanderzand. I live in the Banks area in rural Washington County, and I support this UGB expansion to include all 1,700 acres of land, and I believe it is in the best interests of Oregon. As a mother of a high school junior and a college junior studying engineering, I care about Oregon's economic future. To keep our youth, our future, in Oregon, it is necessary to have well-paying blue-collar and white-collar jobs. Our schools are funded through income tax dollars, and I see the semiconductor industry as a provider of those dollars through good-paying jobs. I see firsthand that our schools need more resources, and our youth need more opportunities. As long as there are smartphones and the technologies that operate them, there will be a need for research, design, and production of chips. Let's do it here in Oregon. Oregon needs to embrace innovation and make an effort to be part of this industry and this solution, instead of lamenting urban sprawl and loss of farmland. To make a serious bid for these high-tech industries to locate here, we need to be forward-thinking in what available lands we have for smart growth. I advocate that it is far better to include all 1,700 acres in the UGB to facilitate the growth of industry from research all the way through production. Including 373 acres is a start, but will most certainly be viewed as a less than serious bid. Oregon has a welcoming city in Hillsboro to take advantage of this opportunity. The 1,700 acres is in the right location to extend the necessary infrastructure in an economical manner. I shudder to think of creating an atmosphere of disinvestment in the tech sector for the simple reason of lack of available land inventory. And contrary to the naysayers, there is not another such well-suited location close to infrastructure and with such positive city foresight and support. Let's not thumb our noses at the potential to attract high-paying tech sector jobs, which ultimately support our schools through income taxes and support our young Oregonians' future job prospects. Let's not hit a point where young Oregonians like my son and daughter leave the state for lack of well-paying job opportunities. Oregon should not miss one of the most influential and economic development opportunities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Wren. I am a landowner and a resident of Washington County. I grew up as a farmer's daughter, and I am a small farmer myself. Oregon is changing, and we need to think about our future. There was testimony provided to the Joint Committee on Semiconductors, co-chaired by Senator Janine Solomon. What impressed me the most is the strong support for Senate Bill 4 coming from Representative Bonamici and Senators Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden. Individually, they each made strong arguments that Oregon should do what is necessary to be considered competitive in the fast-evolving semiconductor industry. Senator Wyden formed a task force to examine our readiness for the federal investment opportunity presented by the CHIPS Act, for which he was a major player as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee in Congress. The recommendation of the task force had to do with workforce readiness, higher education, the regulatory environment, and our land supply. Fortunately, our state government has addressed all of the task force recommendations, other than the land supply. The task force recommendation regarding land supply was clear. We needed large, flat land sites, and they needed to be close to existing industry. That would be North Hillsboro, 1,700 acres. And Mike Rogoway's article in September 15th, 2024 Oregonian, he made clear that Senator Wyden and Intel are both supportive of including all of the 1,700 acres in the urban growth boundary. To me, it seems logical and prudent to pay sharp attention to the inside knowledge of Intel and, more importantly, our federal political partners. I urge you to consider the future of Oregon's economy and hope that the governor will move to incorporate all 1,700 acres into its urban growth boundary. Thank you.
Okay, so Jeff Scott, Denise Claire, and Aaron Nichols. And just hit the button when you're ready to go.
Good evening, Governor Kotek, state officials, and city council members. My name is Denise Kerr, and I've lived at 3806 Northeast Lincoln Street in Hillsboro for 37 years, and I grew up here. I oppose any change to the current designation of 373 acres that Hillsboro wants to grab when there's plenty of UGB land available and improved, so no costly new infrastructure needs to be constructed. In the last 25 years, Washington County has lost 50% of our farmland. Let that sink in. We've already sold the prospectors half of our agriculturally purposed grade A farm soil since 2000. When will enough be enough? When it's gone?
In SB4, you, Governor Kotek, gained the authority to override our 50-year proven gold standard of Oregon's own 19 land use planning goals and system of decision-making on the designation of land and its use. You, Governor Kotek, are currently in the process of granting Hillsboro the unheard of and unnecessary power to designate 373 acres of prime farmland as UGB. But Hillsboro already has more than enough land in their UGB to accommodate Intel and others in their chip developing and manufacturing endeavors. That means that Hillsboro and you, Governor Kotek, have not exhausted all options, as an abundant acreage of UGB land is already designated within Hillsboro's UGB. To allow Hillsboro to designate 3 miles of prime farmland between Hillsboro and North Plains appears fishy to me. Over time, what will be left for regular residents, for our children, our grandchildren, their children? Farmland matters today and tomorrow and will continue to be more precious than gold in all it produces to sustain us, to feed us, to clothe us, and to shelter us forever. In addition, the best use of rich, precious soil to mitigate environmental pollution and damage is to farm it. That's infinitely more important than making chips. And I have 2 more things I'd like to say. It seems like everybody knows that climate change is really on the road to climate disaster, and I don't really see anybody considering that at all. And the fact that just this week I read that we're on the precipice of importing more food in America than we produce. We're almost at 50% where we're going to be importing more food. Now, what kind of sense does that make? Thank you.
Hello and good night, or good evening. It's been a long day. A little bit of levity never hurt, right? My name is Jeff Scott, and I am a farmer in the Hillsboro area. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how this is going to affect me. And I am a small man doing a small thing in a small piece of ground. But I am part of a community, and the community is what surrounds Hillsboro. I would point out that my farm was one of several farms in the area that had food during the pandemic when the grocery stores did not. And we need land in order to produce that food. I do want to point out that I'm not a grass seed farmer, but I chafe a little bit at the distinction between, well, food or not food. Farming is farming. It needs an ecosystem in order to survive in an area. And I will stand with the grass seed farmers just as much as I would a vegetable farmer. The continual, I have to say, I wasn't going to say anything tonight. And then I saw the room that was chosen. It's the smallest room in the building. And I feel like that's a little dishonest and a disservice to the process that we're trying to go through here. It limits both the seats and our ability to say something. I did note too that in the presentations prior to the public testimony, which were very informative, and I do appreciate that, there was really no comment about the impact to the farming or agricultural community as a whole. I would also like to point out that all through this process, there has been no outreach to the farming community. What happens is a little bit sells here, a little bit sells there, and you get the feeling like we're picked off one at a time. I have a neighbor, well, my neighbors, all my neighbors across the road recently have sold, and I don't begrudge anybody for selling, not at all. That's their decision, and I understand why they would make those decisions. But it does create a pretty weird community then when some are looking for a way out and the others have to stay with the consequences of not just their decision, because really, let's be honest, it's not much of a decision when we're talking about the kind of money we're talking about. But it erodes the community, the agricultural community. How long before the John Deere dealer decides to leave town and go down to Mount Angel? How long before I can't get the stuff that I need to raise the food? I want to also mention that in talking with my neighbor across the street in particular, who's been a longtime farmer, he left me with a piece of advice, having gone through the process that he went through. And I guess I thought in the ground bargain, we had a trustworthy adversary across the bargaining table that, land that was going to be set aside was going to be set aside. But he told me that farmers are just janitors. We're just custodians, and we're just here to take care of the land until the city wants to come and get it, because they'll come and get it. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Porter. My name is Aaron Nichols. I'm a vegetable farmer just north of Hillsboro. I'm with the group Friends of Smart Growth. I did have testimony prepared for you all today, and I'll submit it in writing, but much of it has been covered, and honestly, I'm equally frustrated with this process. I have a few things to point out. One, Mr. Diaz mentioned the lack of computer chips during the pandemic. What I think most of us remember is the lack of food. I think many people I respect testified saying the county would be supportive of this, the Metro would be supportive of this, the City of Hillsboro is supportive of this. I will point out that none of them have any idea what it'll do to farming. None of them know even how much farmland is being lost every year, every week, every month in Washington County. We don't add up the UGB expansions, the trades. Furthermore, even more importantly, none of them know how much we need. None of them know what we need to keep the infrastructure, as we were talking about here. To support something when you don't know the consequences is irresponsible. So as I said, I had testimony prepared that goes to the issues. But today, just the pure lack of planning in this, the lack of the need for this, and lack of integrity in Hillsboro's land grab has made me want to read a different testimony. I realize that the public is not going to ever know the facts of this. We'll never know if Hillsboro actually demonstrates need. We'll never know if they have the ability to build such infrastructure while living up to their commitments, like making an affordable city for their residents. In fact, Hillsboro won't have to live up to its commitments. We do know that. They have space for it. They've spent a decade squandering land that they claim to need for high-paying technology jobs on Amazon warehouses, Topgolf, and endless data centers. Rather than being castigated for their reckless planning and wasting limited resources on land grabbing industries that are detriments to the community, they're being rewarded with more land for yet another unproven claim of technology jobs and desperate need for land. If this truly is a once in a lifetime, a once in a generation opportunity, then buy out the data centers, bulldoze those, put it there. Generally, I'm someone who believes we can work within the system, follow the process, and make change. But there is no process here. We are told that the fact-finding, the planning, the public involvement can all be wrapped up in a single decision by a single individual who doesn't live here, doesn't work here, and didn't bother to attend this meeting. This is not a process. There's nothing to work inside. Many outside are picketing because they've been left out of this process by design. Given that this is the process, that's probably where we should all be.
Okay, we have their final three community members online. First will be Preston Korst, second will be Jan Mason, and third Kelly Ross.
And then next up in person, Dean Moberg, Harriet Ottaviano, I believe, and Carolyn, I'm very sorry. The email is john.concepcion. Sherilyn Concepcion, thank you.
Okay,
so we're gonna go with the
first. Oh, you're here.
I'm in person. Yes.
Please.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Preston Korst. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the Home Building Association of Greater Portland. I'm here speaking tonight to emphasize the critical connection between the emerging opportunities in Oregon's semiconductor industry and the urgent need for increased housing production in our state. Oregon's semiconductor industry is a cornerstone of our economy, employing over 40,000 people, mostly in Washington County and in Hillsboro. And with the increased national attention and investments in semiconductor manufacturing, our local communities and economies are poised to reap historic benefits that will span generations. But in order to fully capitalize on this potential, we need to expand our urban growth boundary and invest in our own future. This proposed expansion will create vital space for new manufacturing facilities and innovation centers, helping us attract even more investments and job opportunities. HBA is also grateful for the governor's office for her thoughtful approach to housing, starting with an executive order setting ambitious housing targets of creating more than 36,000 new homes per year. Oregon has taken several important steps to reach that, including investing nearly $1 billion in affordable housing and the successful passage of Senate Bill 1537. Those investments should not be taken lightly, and we should be ensuring that as we look to grow our local semiconductor manufacturing sector, we need to make sure that it's that any future legislation that we consider addresses the increased housing demand that the semiconductor industry will guarantee. But overall, we are very supportive of Senate Bill 4 and the opportunity to increase the urban growth boundary expansion for the acre set. And we would encourage consideration for both Hillsboro and the governor's office to go beyond that and really think boldly and make investments in not only our future, but future generations. Thank you.
Okay, back online to Jan Mason. Jan, go ahead.
Good evening. I am Jan Mason, an Associate Principal and Director of Equitable Development and Communications at McKinsey, a 64-year-old architecture and engineering firm based in Portland. We work with regional economic development organizations and communities, crafting master plans, as well as designing buildings for industrial, advanced manufacturing, and technology clients across the U.S.
Kelly, are you able to go now? Jan will come back.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Ross, and I'm here on behalf of the Oregon chapter of NAIOP, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. I have submitted written testimony, so in the interest of time, I will be as brief as possible. Our hundreds of members have been well aware for many years that the Portland metro area has a critically low supply of vacant sites of 50 acres or larger suitable for high-tech industrial development. And because of that, we are strongly supportive of the governor's determination about the 373 acres and further support calls by Senator Wyden and Intel for the governor to designate up to 1,700 acres of land for expansion. As the governor's determination makes abundantly clear, the 373 acres adjacent to the city of Hillsboro meets all of the requirements and criteria of Senate Bill 4 enacted by the Oregon legislature. We wholeheartedly agree with the determination's findings that the land identified as part of this action will serve as critical infrastructure necessary for Oregon to remain the leading edge research and development center for the United States as companies and technical centers continue to expand and locate in Oregon's Silicon Forest. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to Jan.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, good evening. I was saying that McKinsey is a regional organization that works in Portland, based in Portland, architecture and engineering. We work with communities crafting master plans as well as designing buildings and industrial, advanced manufacturing and technology clients across the US, including facilities in Hillsboro. We support the inclusion of identified lands near Hillsboro into the UGB under Governor Kotek's executive authority granted by Senate Bill 4. We want to highlight some key points during our testimony. Our region is in dire need of vacant, available, and viable land for industrial development. The expansion is crucial for economic competitiveness. While the Metro's UGB report has identified a surplus of industrial land, the average lot size in that inventory is 3.8 acres, and the median lot size is 1.7 acres. Therefore, the aggregate of surplus acres does not accurately represent the viable land for industrial development in our region and does not meet the needs of the semiconductor industry. We also understand Metro is considering the City of Sherwood's urban growth boundary expansion requests, but tonight's proposal focuses on a specific user and a development in Hillsboro. These processes should be considered separately. The task force in 2022 completed an audit of lands across the metro region and recommended that for Oregon to be competitive over the next 5 to 10 growth cycles, the state needed to identify the following development-ready sites: 2 sites of 500 or more acres, 4 sites ranging from 50 to 100 acres, and 8 sites between 15 to 35 acres. From a market perspective, semiconductor clients regularly say they are ready to invest in Oregon, create family wage jobs, and build facilities to infuse billions into our economy. These companies wish to come here immediately and in time. However, we just don't have the land supply for them to meet the size of sites they need. This is not just about urban growth boundaries, it's about equitable economic development for healthy, vibrant, and sustainable communities. Bringing acres into the UGB to win new investments with the expansion will help Oregonians with college degrees as well as high school graduates, particularly those who are socially and economically disadvantaged, ensuring that Oregonians don't leave our state to find and discover upward mobility. We appreciate the governor's thoughtful proposal for 373-acre expansion. We encourage the governor to consider the Semiconductor Task Force recommendations for bold action and bring the much-needed 1,700 acres to attract new semiconductor advanced technology investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so Dean Moberg, you're Dean, and then Harriet Ottaviano, is she here? And Charlene Concepcion? Okay, great. If we do not have Harriet, we will bring Anita Spaeth. Okay, why don't we get started? Because we are going to stop at 9 o'clock. We're not going to be able to get through all of the people who submitted cards, but we will work with you to make sure you have the opportunity to submit your comments.
My name is Dean Moberg. I live in unincorporated Washington County. Thank you for the ability to testify tonight in opposition to including the 373 acres in the UGB expansion for Hillsboro. My credentials include 35 years now retired with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm currently a director with the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, currently a member of the Cedar Mill Farmers Market Board. I am owner of Gash-Gold Vermilion Natural Resources Consulting, LLC. I'm co-author of the reference book, Soils of Oregon, and I earned a PhD in Environmental Science and Engineering from OHSU with a dissertation that focused on the soils of Washington County. I'm testifying on my behalf alone and not on behalf of any agency, board, or academic institution. The soils on the proposed expansion sites formed in deep alluvium that were deposited by the Missoula floods over 15,000 years ago. The inherent built fertility of these soils plus our mild climate allow the production of a vast variety of crops with outstanding yields. And the silt loam texture and the silty clay loam textures on these sites have excellent capacity to sequester carbon. USDA soil maps show the following. Soils best suited to producing crops are rated prime farmland, and farms on the proposed expansion sites are over 90% prime farmland. USDA also classifies soils into 8 capability classes. Class 1 and 2 soils are the best farmland soils in the world. Farms on the proposed expansion sites are over 88% class 1 and 2 soils. Unlike microchips, these soils cannot be designed and manufactured on other places. These soils can continue to produce crops indefinitely, long after research facilities or factories become obsolete. I ask the governor to please act in the people's long-term interest, protect these irreplaceable soils, use land that's already in the UGB for industrial development. Thanks again for the ability to testify, and sincerely thank you for your service.
Hi, thank you for having me. I have asthma and I just ran, so I'm struggling. Yeah, thank you.
Hi there, Sherilyn Conception, 35-year Hillsboro resident. There's been much testimony already about how many of what's been presented as a pro of this plan really, it's not the full story. I'm gonna address a few more of those. When Diaz was speaking about utility planning, I got the aha. So currently Hillsboro is part of sewer and surface water management, which they co-manage with Clean Water Services. They're proposing 8% and 20%, 8% for sewer, 20% for surface water management increases. So Clean Water Services only found the need to give 4% increases. The aha is they're planning for this industrial expansion. Too much of this is falling on residents. My own personal area of expertise, I have studied intently for the last 2 years, Hillsboro water. The same bottom line, too much of this is falling on residents. It's not falling on who uses it. This is a visual I made for the very recent Hillsboro water rate increases. This top red line here is Intel only's water use. They use 38%, they pay 28%. The next largest category is residential, which is over 25,000 homes. They use 24%, they pay 30%. The next largest category is only 10%, which is all the rest of industry, which includes many, many data farms. You can see, they're this green line here, they don't use a fraction of what Intel uses. Okay, so we're already building a second water system. Great expense to the residents, great expense. Not so much for Intel. I mean, they've gone up, but they're not paying their full share. Okay, so you want to bring in another semiconductor industry. Are we going to have to build a third system? We're not affording the second system. Many people are getting their water shut off. There's flip sides. You like to call it economic benefits of bringing in this industry. There's flip sides to this that is not such a benefit to the residents. Also touched on our air pollution. Intel easily gets a pass for doubling their emissions. No problem. They make mistakes. They have way too much going out. Oh, well, they just get a little fine. The agency overseeing them somehow didn't catch it. We're not being protected. DEQ doesn't protect us. Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Anita Spaeth, and I am the Washington County Programs Coordinator for Oregon Agriculture in the Classroom, meaning I have a huge stake in this. I care how this impacts future generations. In the spirit of community and constructive conversation, I'd like to describe to you what could be possible with 373 acres of rich agricultural land. I'm being told the proposed land use change will result in development that brings about jobs and economic growth. But I'd like to describe how instead of industrial sprawl, 373 acres could house Oregon's second advanced level land-based farm development program, a potential sister program to the East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District's Headwater Incubator Program located in Gresham. Located on only 60 acres, Headwater seeks to aid the development of new farm businesses by providing affordable access to land and farm resources. According to their 2022-23 annual report, they had 11 farm businesses operating, which equates to over 100 new local farming businesses in just 10 years. My second case study is Zanger Farm in Portland. In Zanger's 2023 annual report, they noted how on only 24 acres of 22 staff, they provided 7,480 home-delivered meals to over 300 clients, and federally qualified health clinics provided 116 shares in their neighborhood CSA, feeding over 348 people June to October. Welcome 1,306 participants to their open farm days and hosted over 300 volunteers. I could go on with other incredible examples of what 373 acres of farmland can and should be proudly used for in terms of providing economic development and hundreds of meaningful, sustainable jobs for Washington County residents. Instead, I will calculate for you what 373 acres could provide if an organization like Zinger or Headwaters were operating on it. With Headwaters operating on 60 acres, the site in question could host 11 such farmer training programs, boasting an annual 66 new farm businesses. That is training opportunities, employment, and significant economic boost via sales and agritourism. The other example is Zanger Farm operating on just 24 acres, which equates to 15 Zangers operating on the plot of land in question. This could look annually like, according to Zanger's 2023 numbers, 330 year-round farming staff, 112,000 meals delivered to 4,500 clients in federally qualified health clinics, 1,700 CSA shares feeding 5,000 people June through October, 4,500 volunteers annually, and 19,000 people to an open farm day alone. Imagine the implications for economy in Washington County. I implore you to reconsider the false narrative of all that Intel and similar industries promise for our region. And if this means anything to you, I wish your development goals anywhere near the good fortune and beauty that 373 acres of farmer training programming can have. Thank you.
Okay, we are coming up to the 9 o'clock hour. If I feel like we should have two more support, two more oppose, and then we will work with all the others who submitted testimony so that who requested to submit comment, that we will work with you to make sure that your comments can be submitted. If you did not provide us your email, we will contact, please come up and we will make sure you can be contacted. The two on support, Joe Wren and Larry Sullivan. Oh, and just so you know, that the two on deck would be Patricia DePratna and Katie Clark Alsader.
Hi, my name's Joe Wren. I live near Banks. I grew up in Hillsboro, just right in the area, the Evergreen and Jackson School. I'm a small shareholder in Walter J. Benedin Farms. I have my own construction business, and mostly serving Washington County. My family has a great attachment to the farm, but we also rely almost solely on the economy of bringing in business. We rely on Nike, we rely on Intel, we rely on all these businesses to then supply homeowners that need work done that we can take care of. So on our farm radar from way back many years ago, it was almost certain to be urban plan. Then in 2014, the certainty was gone. Not so grand bargain. The only thing good about the grand bargain is it saved it for Oregon to be competitive in the CHIPS Act. The task force reported all 1,700 acres are needed. I think anything less would result in poor road planning and on an already busy Jackson School Road, and also bad infrastructure planning due to natural drainages. As a board member of WJB Farms, it's kind of hard to plan when this has been going on for a very long time, of the uncertainty of what we can do on an annual basis, not knowing that it's in, then it's out, and then it's in. This farm has never had irrigation, likely never will have irrigation. The crops have been almost exclusively grass seed. Why grass seed? All the hundreds of farmers in this area grow it because it's a good income. You're not going to get that kind of income from any kind of a food type crop when you're talking dry land. It just hasn't happened. The farmers want to be able to make money on their land to survive. The whole notion for rural reserve was the purpose of planning for the cities to know where they can grow and the landowners to know how to plan for the future. Because of some backdoor deals were taken away for North Hillsboro, it made it kind of hard to know what to plan for. I would like to encourage the governor to stop the uncertainty and to put all 1,700 acres in the UGB now. It's not very often that you get this many people all with a common goal that are ready to move on.
I'm Larry Sullivan. I live in North Hillsboro. You'll find some of this redundant because I wasn't aware of what the previous presentations might be. What my neighbors and I are looking for out of this process is an honest and equitable application of all of Oregon's well thought out land use planning goals. The Thousand Friends and other like-minded people have ridden their one-trick pony of save the farmland at the expense of everything else for enough. Following the brief history of Oregon's land use laws, in 1973, Senate Bill 100 was passed primarily to prevent parcelization of the Willamette Valley into 5-acre lots. Senate Bill 100 listed 14 equally weighted goals. Among the goals were a requirement for public input into all land use decisions, the protection of farmland, and economic development considerations, among others. These goals were intended to provide a framework for land use decisions that would benefit all citizens. Next, in 2007, Senate Bill 1011 was implemented in an attempt to protect future land needs looking out 50 years. As required by Senate Bill 1011, the 3 metro counties and Metro passed urban and rural designations on thousands of acres. North Hillsboro was designated urban reserve, a designation that meant the land could be considered for inclusion in the UGB at a future date. In 2011, LCDC concurred. LCDC's concurrence meant the land use plan for North Hillsboro was approved by every jurisdictional party in the state. Then in 2014, this all changed when the legislature redesignated North Hillsboro Rural Reserve. This action, called the Grand Bargain, was implemented in a secret meeting held unbeknownst to and without the participation of any of the impacted landowners. The Grand Bargain circumvented Oregon's land use laws and likely sets a precedent for the state legislature taking extraordinary steps when dealing with controversial land use issues. So much for the #1 land use goal, the one about citizen input. Some would say I am unenlightened since I have never drank the no growth regardless of the benefit and not in my backyard Kool-Aid. Be that as it may, which decision hurts the fewest people? Fail to move forward on all 1,700 acres and jeopardize employment opportunities and future state revenues for generations yet to come, or go for it all the way until the world Oregon is open for business and hurt the feelings of a very vocal minority. Seems to me like a no-brainer. Thank you.
Okay, our final 2 for tonight would be Patricia DePratna and Katie Clark Alsader.
It's, can you see the presentation?
Sure.
Hit the button.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Patricia DePratna, and I live here in Hillsboro for 4 years. I moved here because my sons live here, and I'm a retired teacher assistant for special education. I own my own house in Hillsboro, and I'm opposed to the governor expanding the urban growth boundary for multiple reasons. I like to shop in a small business, and ever since the water rate started to shoot up, I noticed how all of them were struggling to keep their business open. In 2022, Hillsboro raised the water rate 22% on all of us residents. But I found that the data centers and the tech industry use millions of gallons of water per day for their computers. Why, as a retired homeowner, should I have to pay higher bills to subsidize the data centers and the tech industry? Thank you.
Governor Kotek, no one disputes that we should support Oregon's semiconductor industry. What we
Sorry,
dispute,
just to state your name.
Nellie McAdams. What we dispute is that these particular 373 acres are in any way needed for a viable CHIPS application. A similar facility in New York is adding an EUV center inside its existing 73-acre site. Even if a larger site is needed, Hillsboro has 1,500 acres inside its UGB, including 400 acres adjacent to the proposed site. The city would have had more land had it not squandered it on data centers. The purpose of Senate Bill 4 was to bypass a legal settlement. Washington County claimed tonight that this land is former urban reserve, but the courts found that designation to be unlawful. The land was designated rural reserve, and the county, city, and metro agreed not to change that designation for another 40 years. The only purpose of this land request is to enrich a few special interests at the public's expense. You heard testimony that landowners are willing sellers. True, some are very willing to sell their land for $1 million per acre instead of $20,000. Those who are afraid to testify tonight have signed consent letters because they have been shown and told that they have no real choice. They can hear the data centers from their homes, and they were pressured by the city and neighbors to sign. Landowners who are willing to sell their land for multi-million-dollar windfall are not impartial, and landowners who capitulate after years of pressure because they have no hope are not willing. Some of the most willing landowners in the 1,700 acres have signed contracts with a man against whom I filed a government ethics complaint. He has been lobbying on their behalf for over a decade to bring this land into the UGB for any purpose. In exchange, he'll receive a percentage of their increased property value. His contracts are unlawful and would result in a commission of tens of millions of dollars. Governor, you entered the office stamping out corruption at OLCC. I ask you to continue to uphold that integrity and to not make a decision that further wastes public resources for the unethical personal gain of a few. All of us deserve a meaningful say in the future of our cities, natural areas, quality of life, and infrastructure debt. It is unacceptable that a decision of such consequence for the region should be made behind closed doors by a city that behaves like a for-profit corporation. It is unacceptable that this is the one and only public hearing about a decision that includes no findings of need or analysis of impacts on communities, equity, or the environment. It is important to note that the legislature found the task force report referred to tonight to be inadequate, since its authors failed to identify and analyze 10,000 acres of industrial land inside UGBs, including large lots in Metro. I understand you have been lobbied by Intel, but ultimately by Hillsboro, to bring in the full 1,700 acres, and I am glad that you've not done so. But a smaller error is still an error. Good economic development does not depend on urbanizing greenfields. It depends on a vision and a plan that the state should set forth with input not only from those who stand to profit, but the people who work and live and pay taxes and breathe air in the cities and counties where these industries decide to locate. This has not been done. I ask you to reject this unnecessary request for land and to reject the use of this anti-democratic power. Thank you.
Okay.
That has where they can submit
Oh, yeah.
testimony.
So there will be open testimony for the next 20 days or open comment for the next 20 days. We're going to put up the slides so that if anyone wants to take a picture, we'll make sure that we will email those who did not get the opportunity to testify so that you can make sure that you can provide your comments directly to the email address. Do we have that slide? Okay. Thank you all for coming.
I got it. I said. I just wanted to introduce myself. The other type
I've heard nice things about you.